Judge wisely. Don't spill food on your flow. Or tea. Does anybody need a refill of a drink?
No, thank you.
Okay.
If I could get a decaf cup of coffee, that would be amazing. Thank you, I appreciate it. Y'all very a lot of hospitality here for the North.
Where are you from? If you start speaking, it'll come faster.
I'm just waiting for everybody to have it.
I'm ready. Everybody's ready.
Oh, okay, cool. You all got it up and stuff?
Yep.
Cool. Sociogenic processes have brought climate policy into a closed episteme by presuming biocentric rational Western man as the agent of knowledge and action. Climate analysts and environmental justice advocates alike have only ensured a rapid acceleration of technocratic colonial capitalism, which will continue to create ecological crises and decimate colonized communities, only by eruption of the word or mythoid that we give in claps to auto-enforcement of the colonial order, which has become neurochemical drives or bios. This, however, cannot be calculated in advance, but must instead be a French would call a real leap, an imminent gesture, produced through combat breath, creating an affective break in the superstructure of this atmospheric death, so allow the damned or the condemned to recognize the positionality in society as non-being only here, and the incomplete life death of strangulation and combat breath can be condemned, become the sword in the heart of the colony, virulent to all forms of colonial sociality, winter of 15. The box class of Marcus and episteme functions the same as the class of knowledge system of life, which the way thinking is linked to the only possible born climate instability, ecosystem catastrophe, the primary began 7050 onward, 750 onward, the date 7050 once the industrial revolution, what happened in 1950 post-colonial nations, fundamentally tractological Bavarianism, the medically educated elites helped keep the empire going. The West had brought the whole human species into its hegemonic model of being human. This is the inactive, uniquely self-liberal model of humanist conception of man as homo economicus. The report things cause global warming or human activities, but they're not at all. The Maasai who are being displaced have nothing to do with global warming. It's all of us, the Western and medically westernized. It is within the law like epistemic terms of globalized homogenized model being human that the climate panel's report recommendations are generated. This means the genre-specific prescribed truth of economics can only be that of whole economics, single absolute model framework in capitalism, and the mode of material producing. There's no absolute no alternative to the planetary, ecologically sustained, increasingly techno-automated, post-industrial, climate-stabilizing, free market capitalist economic system, and established extreme neoliberal, transnational, technocratic configuration. The six movements are really the first opening series, dynamic series of isms in order to challenge man's episteme, and momentarily they're making these challenges all together. But when you separate them, you regime the bourgeois order of things, and besides Bulgarian and travel, which we all fell. The authors report the reference we, whose number of behaviors are strong, the habituality of our planet is that the human population as a whole. Therefore, the proposals are going to be devastating. We're going to proposals made from the perspective of Homo economicus, whose behavior rates are relevant in telos, is precisely called the problem itself, starts dealing with global warming, that we call for the transformation of knowledge, and the process is more complex than it might be here. Like bees in a beehive, who are normally conscious of the atmosphere to produce our very being. It is the word mythoid, the stories we tell, which produce the brain bios or the neurochemical patterns in our mind. Black students experience battlefield fatigue, and predominantly white institutions natives are more likely to be diagnosed with schizophrenia and paranoia. The ontological realm, the stories we tell, these second codes that society's perpetuate become the first codes of our biology, structuring the neural pathways of your mind through a complex system of opioid war chains, placebo to placebos and no placebos, ensuring the cultural conditioning through role and speech identification becomes habituated at the neurochemical level. In this way, the affirmative refusal of the state generally and the specific codes of civil dialogue where humanism made in particular become methods not only phenomenological analysis, a demonic ground revealing how affective speech become violent in climate discussions and in debate, but also serves to short circuit the normative reward system of the brain that habituate role identification and terror simulation colonial sociality. That is 115. As a species, origin emerges the wake of the human as hybrid organism, gene storytelling species, bias with singularity, the co-evolution of human brain, the emerging factors of language storytelling are third and hybrid level of existence, therefore domain specific scarce grows new science of the word. The study of the word knowledge, the study of nature, the study of nature will be the study of implementing bias into the human brain. Here, the genetic codes and non-genetic codes emerge the study of the word is the study of agents, they function according to the laws of nature, the genetically programmed biological genetic codes, role bias with the hybrid, context chemical implant, the non-genetically charged origin stories, the dynamic emergence, the magic communities, our respective ethnic classifications, say the genre-specific subjects of each of the nations that are active and able to subjectively experience ourselves, and visually utilize terms as such, can recognize members subject to likely and performatively enact ourselves as good men and women of our kind according to non-genetically determined set of symbolic life and instructions at the same time at the level of the bias, the brain, the above set of cycle instructions are neurochemically made flesh, the implementation corresponds to the laws of nature, first set of instructions, the second set of instructions being alchemically made flesh, are human social systems or hybrid language and storytelling living systems where they function according to the laws and analogous to the regulatory laws of the broader poetic system. I call these laws of hybrid human auto speciation when we find these laws have been enacted outside of our conscious awareness. We have faced a traditional climate crisis, and which has become more important and imperative that these laws be no longer function outside of our conscious awareness. Demonstrating human society already must look for the sociogenic principle. Once you redefine being human and hybrid mytho and biology terms, you begin to understand the role of such knowledge-making practices report to the genre-specific orders of truth, which in reality, these genre-specific orders of truth serve to motivate semantically and neurochemically the ensemble of individual collective behaviors need to dynamically and accidentally repeat each figuratively made use social human social order as all the poetic, autonomously functioning, languaging, living system. The reproductive, respective truths of the knowledge system are already pre-specified by storytelling, charter, association, general, code of symbolic life, death, as really experience the elaborate status of a system of learning. This overall epistemological order, this order certainly ensures that each genre-specific regime program program which the law has a function to semantically or chemically induce the performative enactment of our ensemble of always already a little role of Canadian collective behaviors of the functional and subjectively experienced terms of commonly closed, autonomously functioning higher level operating systems. Because for all such genres who were even more of the same socialized and origin method, genetically encoded individual biological life intended imperative things self-preservation, but at the same time he experienced adverse places of all death, this can common commitment of additional subject to mainly dire for collective of life, is obviously work from weed, centrality virtually initiated and active storytelling codes, emergency or digital specific each kind, the positive role means directly made into living flesh, because of war placebo terms of the mode of symbolic life prescribed with the storytelling code at the same time. These subjective experience therefore more born of them purely biological life is medically aversive, because they are doing so now in open reward block symbolic death nocebo terms. And thus we find ourselves always grasping for an atmosphere which creates race from our bodies, for the condemned life is not a movement towards prosperity, but always a struggle against the atmosphere of death, and rejecting the colonizer master's cure, whether it be legal relief, metaphysics, or aid, is to reveal in our pathology the violence infused within the cure. As such, we reject the call to theology and orient ourselves towards the imminence of combat breathing, awaiting the event of a real leap which consists in introducing invention into existence. Mariana 16. The cognizance of life is blossoming fruition and purple stroke is an atmosphere of death. This omnipresent death, which multiplies resistance, which refusal of life, but also human response to the close contagious death, or resistance to colonialism is marked by the incomplete life death. The colonized knows the promise to cure the law of colonialism reaffirms itself, whose resistance to life and incomplete death, their writers with pathology. It was revealed as discourse of cure, which is to stand by force and violence, some rotten between the racialized body and infused the cure with that element of violence and compulsion, the atmosphere of certainty and uncertainty defining the body. Affords an example, the shimmer zero physicity of the atmosphere is created in the body, which is blown apart, destiny, reassembled, a body which assumes affirmations, injury becomes unspeakable. Somebody is born to lose disorder and a conserving dinner and conservative desires and those torture racing me for the code of war. It is not easy to describe the only injured body's analytical reversal rather than structural not to decode but overcode over right long criminality, resistance with the advent of decolonial war. The problem with this reading is the notion of resistance because they telos rather grasp an event that deceives all such narratives. Also conceive that the incomplete death that seizes this life, this body is the very thing which refuses to be exhausted by the categories of resistance or pathology, failure for no means by the permanent hemorrhaging, which no order politics to say because the movie of this history, there are a few categories which essentially that being dirty or hysterical, and to think of the body as individual breathing as simply aerodynamic the complexity of our argument, which understands breath as physical as well as psychological and spiritual. In the sense that one's body is always a product of one's environment, thus the affirmative policy itself is an affirmation of combat breathing, the imminent phenomena from which the lines of flight under atmosphere of death are produced, and Act 213. And Maxie said is breathing not simply air that underlies the human being, an activity of breathing for physiological, psychological, physical, as well as spiritual life, innocence, and force of life force. What happens with breathing, drugged by vitamins, that's non-physiological, so unless one presumes breathing is when we observe the colonists, we do not hear the breathing, the slave, the colonized stability, the colonized being, historically connected to solutionary whiting, that is ontology, annihilation, ontological suffocation. For this time, we disrupt the theft of air, require stability, violence is required, decolonization is obviously a program, complete disorder, decolonization, the meat of two forces of the very nature of the day, the cellar, old acquaintance back, without political, ontological entanglement, no coherence to the power relations, vertical specific formations, direct force, and real theft of land and labor, the mere breath becomes the ongoing relation of pro-ecology to being while decolonization emerges out of these antagonisms, its constituent energy is the combat breath itself, the disruptive force required for transformation of the technology of warfare, right technology, which series, but also equivalent citizens will not be killed except by advocating human race in the 19th century. We're not only a way of improving one's race, but a way of generating one's own race through material restriction and whiteness. But what is the temporality and spatiality of this race, little struggle for existence becomes just a tool in the hand of the races, remains justification, now the base of slavery, colonization, equitable influence of the murderous state, and all one and the same. The assuming biological function of the murderous state and colonizing racism, this is being track actual cause, turn upon the vital force to realize the road to critical humanity by suffocating those already dead, deemed ecologies, colonized and slaves that guide the production and generation of interstate structure, political ontology, the principal community of violence, the bodies rendered devilish speaks into repeatedly, with an emphasis on critiquing the projection of growth universals that are not described the world but are visions of the world, modern struggles of relations, practices, and plots working for the historical structures that are the world by ignoring the capital of the Western, not a universally marked or universally practiced, nor is the human universally marked. Race is not generalized phenomena, but one that instruments life force and human existence, the murder of population, the realization of ethics, abstract the body by cleansing its carnality from its practical and ethical universe. He writes, I have no wish to be the fraud, a victim of the fraud of a black world. There is no white world, there is no white ethic any more than there is a white intelligence. I am not a prisoner of history. I should ask you therefore the meaning of my destiny and the world in which I travel. I am endlessly creating myself, and I have the right to allow the slightest fragments remain in my existence. For no reminds us that creating the world needs more than just work and epistemology. It requires hearing one's combat, but generating copious flow of energy, transform one's fragments, staying one's existence. So colonize the world desires nothing but suffocation. Shout out to the 337. Mom, I love you. Dad, I love you. Gabriel, you're real. Shout out to Rachel Hurtado, keeping it down. She's the best. Love her. 337. Nice. Cool.
Yeah, my mom's not watching, so don't mind that. Okay. What's blackness?
Well, I think that question in itself kind of is contradictory to what our Margaret evidence indicates, that the attempt to answer that question will be an attempt to kind of decode blackness rather than overcode it. We think that blackness is probably a lot of things. Some of these might be contradictory, some of these might be unintelligible, but that's kind of the point. By overcoding blackness, we can kind of resist the drive to know that is indicative of like colonial violence.
Okay, I guess the one you see, winter evidence talks about specific movements against the body, and I guess that with each moment of interaction or sociogency, that a body becomes like both physically and spiritually marked by those things. I guess how do we decide what a body is composed of? Like what a body has interacted with over time? Like what
Right, sure. So I think that question is, obviously complicated, right? It would require a lot of analysis. There are things that we can look at, right? Like one way that you could probably look at it is like, why do people in certain situations end up with like psychopathologies? It's probably because the stressors or the violence that they experience might produce that at a psychic level. I don't think that question's as easy as simply just being like, there's one method that always proves what the body is composed of. A body in flesh is obviously composed and structured by many different factors. So she obviously simply looks at the social factors that make the body.
What do you believe is the distinction between body and flesh?
Sure. So I think that the difference between body and flesh is probably one of coherency, right? So our argument is that the kind of blackness is in generally related to the category of flesh, i.e. does not get the bodily coherence of a subject.
We probably say that there probably is no difference, right? So I want to add a corrective to that, but rather that the body is reduced to such flesh, right? This is what our piece of Agatha Andrew evidence that talks about the way in which the self is possessed and the body is dispossessed.
Can I ask you another question? I guess I'm curious, what does combat breathing do about that sociogenic process?
Right, so I think it's important to realize that combat breath is not like a political strategy, it's not like a praxis, it's not necessarily a form of analysis or anything like that. Combat breath is, as our Nathu evidence kind of cites, is kind of the constitutive energy that fuels these types of lines of flight that are produced in the condition of atmospheric death. We think understanding that at a phenomenological net level is important.
And that's what you're talking about with non-sleep, correct?
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think Darius probably has a better explanation of what he wants to say about
the Fanonian leap is something that is a suspension of time, right? So we'll probably say that combat breath within itself, or the constituent force, the insertion of such breath in these debate spaces is probably one of those Fanonian leaps in which there is a suspension of time where
so that's what you'll defend, is that combat breathing is a sociogenic leap in the debate?
I would say it's a sociogenic leap in the debate. I don't think that's what combat breath is.
Yeah, I don't think that.
Okay, now I need you to answer the question, so you will defend that combat breathing is blank.
Okay.
Well, I guess
we'll defend that combat breathing is the constitutive energy from which lines of flight are produced under the condition of atmospheric death.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. 946.
Now what?
Oh, you didn't have to take breath for this session.
46.
You don't have to take breath for it.
You have to take breath for it.
I don't care.
So y'all got.
Y'all have 10.
Yeah. Watch out for that leg.
Yeah. These legs were giving me trouble, so I apologize.
Oh, this is awkward.
That's my way. Oh, what's my
All right, it's just going to be straight down.
What you say?
Just straight down. Like
really straight down, for real. You know I don't trust you.
prepare with Everyone got it?
1 second.
Okay.
orange. There's orange if you'd rather be orange.
Yeah, can I leave that like that? You can have this one. I'm good. I'm ready.
Their Sylvia Winter analysis of humanism is basis for their romantic liberation. This is problematic because Winters thought decenters, black natures, and reinforced the quotation for a violence of erasure, reject the one-sea scholarship for attempt to coherence of civil society. Cunningham 16. Her critique of Western humanism was based around the ontological status of black drawing conclusion when a drawing scholar Winter's thought such as the McKittrick, the prominent status of Winter series, a human within the black politics of scarcity, complex dynamic sociopathic poetic for she immediately engaged with inclusive self-reflexive illustrated the way of how Winter comes with romance and the way of production potentiality and assimilates with this care, the sense of open for coherence and less about providing explanation for black social living or trying to contain the socio-poetic forces in the modes of criticism arranged into potentialities rather than gather the hopes for one to all together through the different hopes of Winter attempts to valorize and practice the humanist of self that could be said about the limited scope of her analysis of birth for coherence and as Winter writes in relation to the plot that slaves grew food for themselves, his relationship with the land remained that of the past since house plots women were provided, the African converted remained obstinately passive, the condition of the possibility of preservation of the opposite passive status of sexual economy, the proliferation of slavery and implicit naturalization of social reproductive labor with it, and truth the capabilities of women provided slave oversight, the gender and sexualized labor in the plantation marks the limited Winter conception and resistance to dominant code and climate, environmentalism, and the nature, all parasitic upon blackness and slavery. Categories of both human and nature are underwritten more by fundamental antagonism between the slave and the world. Davis 66. 18th century witness the initial breakthrough between the biological science and system of classification will redefine the lineage and the description of Africans as interlated, vigilant, and government by caprice. They repeated the association of orangutan, chimpanzee, and currency. 18th century environmentalism, when the white man became human, nor the Negro was a deviation, and their reliance on sincere negritude fails and transcends colonial structures, Jones 10. Negritude poetry offer Africans the promising of becoming the traditional values of traditional structure and foundation position on unity achieved. We're not talking about specific to colonialization, negritude accepted colonial stereotypes and values, not only transcended but the unity imagined the political opposition to colonial rule and negritude intents on reconnecting blacks to the exterior cannot be emphasized to their dialogue of European thought, which promotes an engagement and Caceres too entrenched in moderate European philosophy. This reliance turns softly because it reinforces colonial identity. Jones 10. Caceres understands incarnate through incarnate subject through version of the myth of the inherited African subject overlaid by the European frontier. The negritude is positively defined but not predicated by nouns, but the verb shift to indicate the negritude is not regarded as stated but as an activity. Self-exploitation delving into the unconscious and going on to self-subterranean journey. This identity formation is suggested Hegelian influence and negation design to destroy the negated element instead of the quality preserve, which is the defines of subject. Hegelian dialect does not seem to fit the experience of the African slaves in the New World. It's nonsensical and change the with slaves against the work as a vehicle for self-realization. And much of their wisdom and change necessary condition for the compulsion of labor which the humanity will is to be achieved. Rather than preaching about saying that it should change the political modes of practical labor, as there is emphasis on transformation, common modes Hegel's dialect to serve as a by reforming desire Hegelian subjects not solutions to the again the self-own translated from city rather than the self-derived the negative evaluation to other in the beginning point. And black women are still captive, trapped within the black majors. There's no amount of liberal discourse on bodies, discourse on bodies or subjectivity that can free them from focus on unpredictabilization of the black female is the only starting point for politics. Fillers 87. The New World is the human sequence of the blood represents African people see the scenes of mutilation, dismemberment, exile, the fight, the market, that's the body, wealthy and violence, severing the captive body from its motives. The captive body becomes a force that is irresistible, destructive sensuality at the same time, still time sunny, contradiction of captive body, reduces things to capture sexuality, provides that physical, biological, expression of other body, sheer power of this insight into more general powers resonate with the various centers of social meaning before a body no fresher degree of conceptualization is not to give the condemning brush over the discourse of flesh and consideration aesthetically contemporary or discourse critical discourse nor analysis discourse with Africa people-centric historic conditions on them to wait, but also the topic specifically externalized active culture and prostitution about racializing the unproductive female placement female on gender offers and practicing theory or sex and living and dying captive body version to the focus and gathering social realities and this metaphor that so thoroughly interwoven in literal and figurative emphasis the distinction between the virtual virtually using this captive female body that's just liberated the brilliant epiphanies and released the dynamics and name and evaluation remains grounded in the original metaphors and captive mutilation and symbolic order and American grammar in the beginning, which really represent radically different cultural continuation of violent formation of modern African consciousness during the initial open Atlantic slave trade. And Winter's retooling of fan theories of sociogenesis as bankrupt their scientific account of the humanist strips blackflesh and the experience of Vietnamnical encounter their dependence on scientific observation recolonializes blackness because it only understands the process of invention as transcending biological imperative. They immediately use fan as an instrument of transgression toward the essential utopia where the blackness is made present through the collection of data depicting absence. Marriott 11. The view as a social contract along the lines of biosphere has become popular, being raised on there in the Western history, and according to Winter, they articulate the evolution term and contrast between social principles, hierarchical objects within the kingdom of the difference between Winter's principle is essentially the use of fantasy of the evidence of radical divorces to potential social genius reverses the experience of consciousness, non-reducible biological processes. Winter's formulation social genius were entirely confined to the structure, continuing aware about invention, a constellation of the problem has turned as the epochal rupture that allows to go beyond the current history of human. I don't think any return attempted to represent society as a physical with all families carefully question that limited percent phylogeny and ontogeny. They inversely reach for a called misoptic description without harness of fairness, harness the findings of the natural science, including neuroscience, as a purpose is able to transcend them. Transcend them in the terms of the senses. Winter never questions the implication of relying on scientifically determined concepts. The should be the black and white BSN white W to be announced or reinvented ultimate science formula this soundability early impact in futures and perfect and emphasis on abilities at the level of psyche is nowhere. The morning centralized ideology masculine there should be there like an individual the dimensions of self promises in land to you must be intelligence of all the masculine dialect and their use of historical instances of violence is linked their violence experienced by others is contingent upon non-participation in social practices. Anti-black violence cannot be evidenced through historical events because its structural position continued outside of humanity, can create an objective non-conditional relation to violence. Wooderson 11. BLA Law 66 operations, the largest police state in the world, subject to predators of dancing since one moving on the west stationary war brought to the controversy asymmetrical forces suitable red larger subjective is the vertigo of the member of the sensation only somebody spending otherwise stable one environment perpetually unhinged with this relationship with the violence cannot be enlarged as objective vertigo is like considered disoriented and structural as opposed to the performative violence black subjectivity is the section of performity in the structural violence black sentient beings of non-human suffering contingent violence of violence cases when he were resist or perceive the resistance disciplinary discourse in capital N or obedience with the black people some assumption of violence paradigmatic destiny to stand up performing contingency political ontology just radically from the political ontology of a sentient being who is constituted by discourse and listed violence like he or she breaks it with the ruling of discussions of human revolutionary so however subjective vertigo market at subjective vertigo. Van's colonial overthrow the mass can never include the black subject. R. James Evans is hella good on this question because Van's colonial overthrow simply rearms power structures. James 13. The problem is difficult to identify because it requires time and space momentum advance forward moments that transform the intellectual and organic intellectual revolutionary colonize reason has no return to the people each person shuts himself off subjectivity and rebellion like Ukraine the middle turns to strain by the ruler brother escaped dark revive the folk every fosters alteration of call for calling rebel intellectual family obligation to sustain the mass people market at people and Our alternative is to reject the affirmative in order to focus on the unflinching paradigm analysis that begins at captivity and non-consent that calls for the end of American Wooderson 10. I begin to see how the unflinching paradigm analysis is going to be overthrow the existing or neoliberal comprehensive radical element that charge movement mainward to our inability to witness the whole martyr feed of the part of the political and predict on the unflinching paradigm analysis that allow our energies to be displaced under pragmatic consideration. I'll finish reading that. James Garth here. The same body sufferability, victories, removed targets, colonial subject, racial repression, insecurity, this insecurity, authenticity, negativity, the present colonialization, the racial native intellectual mitigate, the claiming colonies and rebels to interpret these translate native desires and degree of this one does not struggle to be common like the other natives, one that struggles to be the other natives are common natives are saying they share one cultural blackness, that heroes and emergence consciousness, no politically under the right condition, everyone to be murdered.
I'm sorry.
Do you want a marked version?
Yeah, it's marked at murdered, I think, right?
It's marked at murder, but I also marked the Wooderson card at subjective vertigo, but I'll send a marked version of that.
Okay, I'll wait for that before we do serious. Okay, my first question is about this Jones 10 evidence that's kind of talking about negritude, right? I guess I want to know what the link between negritude and Cesaire's study of the word is.
The study of the word, the evidence indicates that Cessaire thinks that through the study of the word or prophetic life, that there is a form of that there is a form of apocalypse to come. That's why he says that there is the end of the world. That's
Right.
why
I guess my question is in the context of the
We think
winter
that
evidence.
winters-
How does it? My context is in the context of the winter's deployment of the word, right? Is something that would shape bios. I get that, like, you know, like Cesaire himself might have been invested in this type of like apocalyptic word. But my particular question is, what is the link to using the study of the word to understand how the bios is formed?
No, that is our argument, is that other people studied Cessaire to say that end point or the telos at the end of the world is good. Actually, winter starts
I
from the
guess that's
bios and the
just a difference
relationship
in
to
that
the
question.
world. I mean, no, there's
my-
there's
sure.
not a fact.
That's fine. That'll be the debate. My next question for this Wilderson evidence, kind of talking about subjective and objective vertigo, right? How do we kind of understand violence, or like any type of violence, if we can be like, yeah, you see, this experience would be a moment of the deployment of objective violence? Can we point to any moment of violence to understand how violence happens?
Right. So yeah. I mean, Wooderson is specifically talking about like violence that happens to subjects that have like who are sentient beings that have.
Yeah, like I get the difference between subjective and
Right.
objective vertigo. My question is like, can we point to any moment of violence and be like, that's, you know, like that's worth thinking about, or is it always like pointing to any moment that violence has occurred always, you know, a
Well,
link
we
to
think
this?
that the act creates a form of historical aphasia because your attempt to label things, for example, 1750 to 1950 as a clear explanation of the ways in which, for example, industrialism created a new epoch that we need to come to terms with, which is what Winter bases her idea of sociogency from.
Okay, yeah, sure. That makes sense.
Yeah,
I think Darius has a question.
I guess, then does power ever shift? Are there changes in the way that power operates via anti-blackness?
it's not a question of are there.
Well, that's my question.
No, but I'm saying that there's something that gives the power intelligibility, which is our argument. So there's something that undercodes the ability to exchange or manipulate power. Your argument is, does whiteness shift? Sure.
Okay, cool.
So
Then
I guess what was that other explanation, or what does that mean in the context of the affirmative? Because I guess that's just like abstract theorization. I guess I want that back.
I'm abstract theorization. No, our argument is that the affirmative engaged in a process of attempting to explain or analyze the ways in which history has led to a place where we should engage in a quote-unquote leap, or a leap away from imminent, or an imminent
Okay,
leap.
my last
We
question,
think
just
that
before
is
it gets done, is that Fanon is one of the people who critiques Hegel, right? He's like, the master doesn't want recognition from the native, he only wants work. So kind of, how does this James 13 evidence operate in terms of its critique of the Hegelian dialectic?
All right. The link to Cessaire is that your understanding of like.
No, this is different thing. But
Are
that's
you
okay.
talking about the Jones?
No, I was talking about the James one, but it's cool. We'll take 1 second now.
You're staying both again.
Sure.
Sorry, I didn't mean to like throw it. But, like.
Oh, I did. Oh, I didn't get none of that. Bruh, come on.
This is still out of state burrito.
I'm gonna do this one.
Don't get at least
Somebody go see me looking on
what's this?
Like a small fried rice, and then just small fried rice, like vegetable fried rice.
Yeah, it's all of that shit. It's just no race. It's everything.
Small fried rice.
I don't know everything. The other all the green. That's why it was kind of weird, because I was like, she said, do you want rice with me? Why do you want that? Oh, I didn't know. Yeah, it's kind of weird. But we'll try it, like, if it has, I think I can run and get another. Would you go like that? And you're like, hey yo. You got the movie? Yeah, I got the movie. I thought the movie was oh my god. I need my car. You still got the movie? You got the movie?
Send the GDX.
Oh, no, she doesn't. How would you? Is that queso or salad dressing? I think it's real. That's really big problem with that. I see those things and I see the hairstyle like that.
Oh, you can stop right. I'm sitting out the stop.
Okay, so, I'm trying to put together this stream for you real quick, Darius.
Unless they come to First off, please don't be first. We don't mind straight. I don't want to hurt you.
Where are you trying to speak? Right here?
Okay.
See if it stays stable for you.
Right next to you.
See? That's it.
Yeah.
Finish your laptop wasn't
I was
on
about to say that could have happened a lot later.
It's tricky.
Or broken.
Yes.
That sounds so impossible.
I guess if we're going straight down, we can just go straight down.
Straight tap it. See if it falls.
We almost fall. We're gonna be on my misfortune. You grabbed that and it was like one. Because this is one of
I have the gym stuff whenever you want.
Just put it right here, man. I'll have that.
Walk around.
I don't know where it went.
Oh, I gotta do my little shout out real quick though. Shout out to the 318, shout out to 337, shout out to the 504, shout out to the Bay, holding it down. You watching this round. Shout out to Brittany Planks for helping me, for real though. Shout out to my mama, shout out to my brother, shout out to all my cousins out here that helped me get here. Shout out to Dr. Lupe.
And your number 3 songs on my head.
Shout out to Jasmine Taylor, they out here killing shit, you know what I'm saying? Make the Bay pretty again. Shout out to Taylor Bro, shout out to the panel, shout out to this team. Honestly, shout out for real. Oh, shout out to Nico's mother and father. They helped me get here. I wouldn't even have had an apartment. They wouldn't have sounded like close distance. For real. I wouldn't even be here. For real. Not really.
Shout out to Gabriel Juarez.
I got to shout out everybody else. Anyway, waiting for y'all to get in the car around these spaces.
I'm starting your timer.
Huh?
Don't start it because I don't have a
There's no hard.
No, this is.
There's a pen right there.
You replaced
We're already ready for 2 minutes.
Don't hit the table because your laptop may fall.
I guess I'll go ahead and start.
Wait,
Please don't start. Please don't start talking.
It's right here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm gonna start my time. No heart. No young savage.
Okay, that was good in terms of recording.
I think if we're just flowing straight down, I'm just gonna move straight down. But the case page is, I guess, the app is gonna be first, then the criticism proper. And I'll sign those two. Let's get it.
The affirmative use of breath and atmosphere gets as an analog for corporate life, energy, and global warming reveals a fundamental, and also these detach the alternative fundamental unique claim to the way that climate change operates. Our winter evidence, which we will probably both agree on, that climate change is sociogenic, not anthropogenic, as the antagonism with nature is between some unified human and the anthropos, but instead the superstructure anti-black colonialism was categorized both on journey black population objects to be used in force to participate in the structure of the environment through the myth or the creation of the universal truth, which I really don't understand that sees their links, but we will get to that later. But the anti-black colonialism required the colonization, death, of their own space, the recognition of the white master. B, mind meets the atmospheric death, aka power function, the production, non-genetic order codes that alienate the subject and occupies the ability to produce meaning, train, and transmit meaning. Our theorization of power begins from a sociogenic approach to sociology as a study to how cultural values develop in social and political spaces that impact how bodies and language express and interact. Our argument that sociogenic violence overdetermines social and political relations via the skin of the gratuitous mundane violence of the white that steals the breath of the slave and creates a form of mental or a form of mind that mystifies the paradigm, reaccumulates the afterlife of slavery through the myth, or specifically in the context of very rhetoric or language that gives deposited into the psychic space of the source spot at the level of flesh through the process of epidermalization. I don't know if that was too abstract for you. That renders black ecologists dead and breathless objects to be extended repeatedly. As the state for white subjectivity, this replicates to reproducing modes of social death that justify the destruction of the spaces of the lower wards in New Orleans to maintain stability of white spaces of the first quarter, the displacement of Chicago ghettos, and the condos in even the first world, even the concept of first world nation, which requires using second and third world ecologists as collateral jam with that. I can thank you to Winter and myriad evidence. Now, see, you can start this argument, whereas you're going to have to rock with me real quick, as I told Kevin before, rock with this understanding of how we're going to be explaining combat breath. Our argument isn't that combat breath is something you can decide as Eric Garner or Sandra Bland, and now wake up the next one and they're thinking that their last breath was going to produce political gestures such as I say her name or I can't breathe, but that will reveal the rigid structures, atmosphere, death, and allow for this some sort of collective affect in which we all understand the way that this atmosphere is not separated, i.e. debate is not separated from the atmosphere around us that produce these colonial spaces. Our evangelical evidence provide a fundamental uniqueness question about the imminent nature of combat breath and immaterial life force that exceeds metaphysical notion of positive that can only be traced after they occur, which is why debate is unique, because in imminent space, as you judge, you can only flow my arguments as they present and reveal themselves, which is why experience of phenomenology is exactly our argument. Combat breath is the existential resistance that constitutes that's the constitutive of black life, and anti-blacks always try to reduce blackness to the flesh, to the body, to the soma. The insertion of breath is the thing that emerges through the antagonism is always antagonistic toward anti-blackness or white life, as the police officer tried to choke Eric Garner, they tried to choke Sandra Bland, his iteration of I can't believe, their iteration of saying her name while being choked, as serves an imminent resistance that continually asserts blackness as life, blackness as a life yet to come, even if this atmosphere is always one of death, or this line of flight is snuffed out. Our black life is the antagonistic force that has value, whereas our piece of academic evidence states that one, not a prisoner of history, one should not seek there for the meaning of my destiny. Breath is the analytic prevents the occupation of breath that allows one to preserve the terrains of existence in a world that desires nothing but suffocation. It is through the confirmation of this incomplete death that seizes this life, this body, that recognizes the fluidity of power and how forms of atmosphere that produce the possible lines of fight through its fixture to ambiguity. And it is the breath that is not yet taken, but a breath that is taken by power that refuses to be seduced by that moment of occupation of breath. Instead, the affirmative shape backs that corporal life energy and dwells within this liminal space that recognizes the permanent hemorrhaging of the body or endless resistance of the body, in which no all power can stem from. That's a piece of myriad evidence that this insertion of breath or bodily resistance or somotechnis into the symbiotic space of debate that uncensures the very attempt to repress the corporal life energy of the black and colonized, which is the reason why that we are probably a necessary prerequisite to lead to the alternative, because we need these forms of combat breath to insert these spaces to be able to try to grapple with these coherent grumblings of suffering, which is to allow for the criticism to be even be spoken in these spaces. Now you can go to criticism alone.
Orientation do both in turn combat brings in the multiple points of resistance, which constitute the embodiment of the zone of non-being for the enslaved and the colonized that blurs the line between the self and the other. At their piece of James evidence would like to classify and also be the antagonist relationship between the slave and the master, what allowed for the paradigm to reaccumulate itself to these forces of power. That's our piece of Angela and Winter evidence. Also, to that solves the criticism of the act, the only way to resolve this criticism because the pathology of the colonized can be ruptured by the signifiers of temporality itself. And also, their whole argument is a walking double. So you can't read Marriott, you can't read Wilderson, and you can't read your piece of James evidence as Marriott would like to provide a criticism of the way in which ontology operates. I'll get to that also argument later. But also, too, you say that racial capital and also the argumentations overshadow racial weight, but then you read an unflinching paradigmatic analysis and analysis that understands about the way in which racial capitalism operates in these debate spaces. If there is a question of flinching in this debate space, it's probably going to be the best for the negative argument. And also, too, our piece of Marriott evidence talks about these flinches are something that is always inevitable, as so there's not a refusal to life, but they'll move away from this type of contagious death. Now, I don't know if that would abstract enough, but this is a double turn to all of the argumentations. You should not let them get away with this shit. This is an independent reason why they are the re-replication, the re-centering of civil society and their position on ontologization of slavery, and reaffirm the cement of moralism which structured anti-blackness in the first place while walling in despair, and would turn their own arguments of understanding Marriott. That's Marriott 12. Wilson's conception of anti-blackness is the major structural antagonism against the concept that racism can never be continued on black experience. The problem is that it remains at a piece of Nietzschean imperatives that be said, and we can only confirm these imperatives as absolute rather than chart a path beyond them. And so far, there's no outside to black social death and alienation, no outside to this outside, and all thought the mirror is own enslavement. Not so much Afro-pessimism thought is wedded to his own despair. There's always the desire to have the black lived experience named the worst. Such a desire collapse into a sense of moralism. The black has to embody this abject without observing the denial of any ontological integrity of the black slavery, reduced ontology to the logic of non-recoverability. The blackness and the absolute outside can only reify this void at the heart of universality. The chasm between human life and black death relies to reassert the endless non-relational absence of blackness and reduce the race to a logical non-relationality. This translates into lots of black suffering and fundamental absolution and moralistic, and also Marriott doesn't really agree with Winter's reading of sociology. Is just how she historizes the understanding of origin. And when they see Marriott evidence is a critique of this telos argument, you should be able to understand the affirmative just not as two pieces of evidence, but rather as a whole entire narrative about how the story of combat breath is not locked into a telos, which is why exactly I'm arguing about the way in which we should overcode blacks. It's not a form of decode. That's just Marriott and 11. Let me first say that I don't think Winter's reading is simply tedious or inaccurate. Sociality shows how modern self oscillates between two singly naturalized sets of such about what it means to be human, while but non-sociality refers to how humans' inferiority comes to read biological, solely racial, economic terms, non-finding the precise meaning of addressing and critiquing racism and discourse of time and the failures that are object to his study, and also permutation do both the affirmative I'll make that argument above. The affirmative is not I'm tripping. The affirmative is not it's not a normative affirmation or negation of social life, but rather the paradox of posing the question, what does it mean to live in death of this incomplete essence? More specifically, what life mean in the context of death, rather than viewing the affirmative through prescriptive claims of celebratory revolt against anti-black. The affirmative perverts and pathologizes revolt itself, curling up with its own pathology in a way to stay within the whole of the ship. This is not a temporal understanding of the lines of flight, but rather the temporal suspension of this line of flight that is Parliament 16. In the wake of recent onslaught of black death, the murders of black men, women, and children have been circulated and witnessed by millions. This over ever-growing archive of black death is an outcome no different than the decision in the case of two black girls. In the case of two girls, no one would ever be convicted or held responsible for the murders of these searches. Led me to revisit what was possible in a slave ship, on the border of a slave ship. Our president makes two appear. There's no space outside the threat of death, so we make a place. We take a place. We make outside while we're healers and hold captives on the inside. We hold these deaths in our bodies and our songs. Create a way to celebrate the lives and memorialize the death of those ones we love. We never knew these prices did not occur, did not and do not occur outside these zones. Anticipating premature death. They did not happen in safe places, but they're here and now where we are in a time and place where we're refugees and temporary. Our mourning will not wait. It cannot be deferred. This is a great paradox in play. How is possible to entertain the ideas of care, love, and regard become violent extreme and no revival to slavery? This question will require me to recalibrate and imagine differently the collectivity that emerged from the whole line of thought that is made possible to discern pictorialities and capacities residing on the ship, and you can mark it as ship. Now, you can look to this piece of Jones evidence. It's an argumentation about Caesar, but no link for two reasons. The first piece of Jones is about negritude. Not the affirmative. Negritude is a literary and artistic movement. Not the one seen also for Fanonian understandings of negritude, which is a separation from these understandings of simple affirmation of negritude that can just rise up and pull themselves up by the bootstrap. That's a piece of Marriott evidence. Also, too, there's no link either. Why? deployment of science of the word is not toward the telos of the end of the world, but rather the understanding of how the word shaped the brain. This is not aimed at the populace, but an informative project. You should have read this against Wakestaff. Now they read this piece of Spindler's evidence that talks about the way in which the black matrix should be specifically locked into a telos, or how we understand the root cause debate, where this is not a power versus power debate, but the way in which these theorizations of power actually matter, and what does it mean to use a theorization of power. This is just an abstract concept, but also to this Spindler evidence doesn't even really talk about that the black matrix should be the starting point. You should call for this card at the round. It just said that there's a violence that happens against black women.
Okay. You good?
Yep.
Okay, it was just permutation to both. Because he said it twice, and I just
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so can you help me understand this Marriott evidence? So I'm kind of confused on why Marriott is a double turn to Wilderson, or that understanding of like political ontology.
Well, Marriott would like to provide a criticism that's based on the idea that black social death is something that can never be seen outside of humanity, right? So this is where Marriott provides this criticism, or a Fanonian criticism, understanding ontology within itself, that is solely pessimistic, that it cannot understand lines of flight that are produced from these sorts of social death.
Also, to build off that just briefly, the Marriott evidence is very clear that what Wilderson is articulating is not an ontology, but it is a logic that functions throughout the world. This is distinct from an ontological framework. The evidence actually goes pretty in depth, describing the steps that Wilderson takes through his Lacanian reading to understand how does like blackness get from where it is to being like, you know, non-signifiable and things like that, or being subject to this violence. But he says that's located within a kind of logic or a process, and is not something that is locked within an ontological position.
Also, too, our argument would be one of phenomenology or experience, not one of just
Cool.
solely
All right. So
ontology.
how does combat breath? How does combat breath? Give a better grammar of suffering.
I guess.
Right.
Well, that's our argumentation of sociogeny. So combat breath would rather be the advocacy, or the quote unquote, I guess, a debate solvency mechanism for our arguments, right? Sociogeny is the exploratory power of this grammar of suffering. So I guess if you want me to answer why combat breath is a solvency
my next question is like, how does sociology explain things like reproductivity, the black matrix, that side of violence? How does
sociogeny?
Yes. Or
well, sociogeny is the idea that codes are placed upon bodies. So then if bodies are scripted a certain way and viewed or interpolated by specific bodies, then that would explain this argumentation about how black women then become sexualized in the status quo to these norms of reproductivity, to these norms of hypersexualization, to these forms of violence that our Winter evidence would probably like to state, that there are non-genetic codes passed on through the socius or the wider context.
How does your understanding of power understand that though? Like your understanding of like captivity, reproductivity, that's just an explanation of like how sociology works, I guess, in relation to black matrix. But what does combat breath do to like, I don't know, forefront that?
Yeah, so I think that the sociogenic analysis is important insofar as it understands things like generational trauma. So the way that the specific social codings of black women, right, throughout time that have subjected them to like higher rates of sexual violence, right, is something that prones bodies to more traumatic experiences that have not lived trauma yet. So trauma is passed down cyclically. Sociogeny understands that those second codes, right, of being traumatized become the first codes of biology and become passed down. Understanding why black women can be traumatized by sexual violence that they have not phenomenologically experienced is important.
Okay. 4:37.
Q, since everyone's out, do you mind if I run get some coffee real quick?
Absolutely not.
Thanks, appreciate it.
I heard you that.
Wait, drink caffeine or just having that
Not a fan. I'm trying to do this to you.
You have a doctor?
I do not.
Cool.
Enough cards in this one.
It shall be just like the order of the two AC. It's just going to be the order of the two AC. The permutation will be in the one another.
Are there any colors?
No.
I love these debates. It's got a flow.
Actually, wait.
My little old finger.
Six, no, we have
Never mind.
608.
Sorry.
No, you don't.
That's not the purple one?
Yeah.
Just when you put that whole contraption away. Just like a little thing. And a low hand. That's also one man.
Pretty good day. It's been a pretty good day.
No.
It could be better.
Okay, 518.
What kind of TV?
I'll make the most of it.
Were we right about something?
No, we had 437.
Oh my goodness, why do you think I'm put your notes in people's stuff?
That's not first of all.
It's like what?
Just make it fucking up from the drink. So why would I
So,
put your notes?
407.
Okay.
We have 407.
2XC.
First off, that
Order of I'm sorry, 2XC. Order of 2XC with perm.
Straight down.
I was confirming the press.
And I
I was talking to her.
I was talking to you.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. The top of the 2AC Pro Solar Link argument says that climate change is a process of corporal climate change, that it's the anthropogenic, that it's not anthropogenic, sociogenic, which attempts to displace responsibility, saying the responsibility is on us of white people because of the relationships between different times and space, 1750 onward, then 1950, post-industrialization created a process sociogenic, but where bodies from Arctic deep henceforth were capable of existing near spaces of pollutants. Our argument is that it's not a science, it's rather a system of anti-blankness which creates mastery and henceforth pollution is diluted in areas where black bodies are. The climate change is rooted in the oppression of black people. Anti-blankness is an emission that was produced by white suburbia, created and compounding massive amounts of CO2 and pollution that contributed to state extinction. Environmental violence is spatial racial formation establishes segregated land patterns where undesirable elements were pushed to black people were reminded to stay in their places. Not a positivist scientific explanation of violence, but rather an explanation of cultural causes that led to certain degrees, to certain varying degrees of CO2 in the air, which is what I'm going to impact on when I get to the winter evidence. But this is not a fucking scientific argument. It's a rather an argument about the ways in which cultural causes lead to more pollution in more areas because of state-sanctioned violence, because of an antagonism of anti-blankness that remedies certain bodies as deviants and henceforth relatable to certain forms of environmental degradation. Second of all, you don't solve the climate. I'm not sure what they think their app does, other than have a thought process about bodies, and one in which we can question Fanon's leap and say that combat breath is a way to engage in those forms of politics, while conceding that the top portions, the winter, nor the Agatha Angelou evidences are not contingent upon the affirmative. You have an argument about the ways that sociogency is important, a reason why those things, sociogency shapes bodies. You don't have a reason why we should engage from 1, the Anthropocene, 2, why conversation the Anthropocene is relevant, 3, why the AF engages in scientific positivism, 4, why you don't begin at captivity, and 5, why the fuck you try and obfuscate all 2 and C offense by reading Marriott when you've read Double Turns to yourself. Their next argument is about you needing to run with them. Their affect is predicated off of flesh. Our argument is not that we can reanimate the flesh or create new symbols upon the flesh, but rather that blackness is the thing that gives sociogency its meaning. I think that this should be pretty clear in cross-text. I think it's pretty awkward when I ask what blackness is, and the answer I get that Nick gives is we should contextualize a lot of our links. They say blackness is constantly changing, answering, and attempting to overcode itself instead of decoding structures. That's why we have to continually resist blackness and resist the drive to know. And it's that that it's always a product of the colonialist world to try and explain blackness. The answer for Mary is fucking simple. Blackness is pathology. Blackness is, that's why Fanon is violent and traumatic. That's why the leap for Fanon is violent and traumatic, because it's not a leap into a new understanding or new idea as they like to place it, or even a transfer where we hold the fucking leap. It's a traumatic experience for Fanon where he realized that in that moment that he's pathologized, and henceforth there's no escape because he leaps into the white gaze. It's his fucking argument that there was nothing that he learned from that interaction, but that it was pathology in that moment. He realized he could never fucking transcend, which is the reason why Marriott reads Fanon and says that that's why we have to begin from black pathology at flesh rather than pathology within the world, which is the reason why Spiller says that we have to begin from flesh, not social practices. I'm going to make this clear because I don't think that the F is making an argument. Marriott says that people like Winter equal bad because they're humanists, and I'll explain that in great detail later. But the F says that we should engage in a politics of combat breathing. Agatha Angelou's conception of combat breathing is one that says that we have to resist the political structures of the world, right? That we can engage in a colonial anti-colonialism in the world. I didn't want to say that the opposite. In the world, because we can engage in combat breathing, one which reinserts ourselves as militant against civil society. Marriott's conceptions of anti-colonial politics are through an affirmation of pathology, not through a reclamation of animations upon the flesh, which is our argument about why pathology has to begin at flesh, which is what they would like to call phenomenology, rather than engaging in a politic of scientific positivist explanations of sociogency. We shouldn't try to explain it in terms of science or as a scientific fact or a proof, which I'll get to in a little bit later because it makes shit super eugenicsy instead of just being like, there were cultural causes to shit and that was bad. The next argument was, I think that this can be contextualized in the context of their police versus anti-rape violence because it explains the ways in which we try to attempt resistance within the world means that black people never get to die because we think that echoing the words of people past their deaths or in their moment of atmospheric terror is an attempt to reclaim or an attempt to connect spaces through life and death rather than a realization of blackness as pathology, shit like Attica, prison rights, etc., where black people affirm black pathology is a lot different than affirming blackness in relationship to police violence or resistance, if that makes a lot of sense. Does that make sense? You should affirm the radicalization of death is quite a bit different than saying I affirm resistance as pathology. Those are two totally different statements. Their next argument is that they leave a flight from humanity, that they create a flight because of secured humanity. I think you should look at the slippages between the middle of the 2AC and the end of the 2AC, because I think it proves all of our link arguments, because he continually repeats that they're a flight away from existing structures and that this flight is possible because of their resistance, and at the end of the 2AC he realizes his slip, and that's why he says that it's not resistance from the structures, but rather it's not a flight from the human, but the process of, but he explains it as a process of flight that holds the flight there, right? That's why he says, like, oh wait, no, it's not a leap into something new. It's a leap itself. We just sit in the leap to understand violence, which is our argument about the slippages between the 1AC and their ability to explain a solvency mechanism and the ability to say that they affirm pathology. Marriott, pathology. Their solvency mechanisms say that we need to radicalize the pathology. Their next argument is about embodiment. I think that I've already made it quite clear about why embodiment of flesh is different than signifiers. They explain blackness as the signifiers rather than blackness, the thing that gives the signifiers itself meaning, which is our argument. It's not that blackness is the signifier that can be circulated, but rather black bodies are the signifiers that can be circulated upon a grid of flesh, which is our argument about the way that power operates, that they can't come to terms with nor co-opt. If we win that there's a discongruency in the F theory, that's going to be a large part of the 1 in R, but I want to make it clear if we win that there's a discongruency in their theory. It also proves that their ability to call themselves a narrative and henceforth to co-opt certain parts of the alternative is impossible, especially when they've said that the 1AC is an artifact and a speech act, that we should view it through his explanations, not just the explanations of, I don't know, Winter in a broad sense, but your 1AC was a speech act. Winter gives a description of violence, and I'll use my last bit of time to explain why that's bad. Listen, Winter fucking sucks and creates a form of science positivism that's terrible for black people. Winter thinks that the fundamental antagonism is one between blackness and nature, proven by the concept test to understand all human social orders we must, but therefore think of sociogenic principle. Goes on to say that the new purpose of the Cessier's new purpose of the world, such a science would be defined as a study to the determine the study of nature. This implication is the study of nature. This will now be specifically a study implementing the bios of agency of the human brain. Okay. It's not a question of are you associated, but you create new genres of an antagonism that begins associagency, which is the problem. It's not animations upon the flesh we disagree with, or should not occur, or associagency in a broad sense, but rather positive science that will enter and faces racial rate for focus on racial capital. Henceforth, the affirmative gets consumed in ways they don't intend. Look at me at the end of the debate and tell me and tell me that eugenics is until you reject on face. Look, at the end of the day, the logical result of the plan could be white people being like, black people have cognitive disorders because of slavery and racism and poverty, and henceforth are more likely to commit crime because of the relationships they experienced to the literal places that they lived, because it literally marked their brains in a way that was necessarily different from others. For example, and that's just like a logical leap, obviously, but there are ways in which when we explain something as science-based and we say that sociogency is a model for science rather than of just cultural causes, it then is justified as an actual science.
You say that an affirmation of pathology is good, but then later on the Winter evidence says that when we use science positivism, it creates eugenics in which they are viewed as irrational. I guess my question is, why would an affirmation of pathology not be the same as the colonizer looking at that body that's affirming that pathology and saying that they're irrational?
Because there's a difference between a dance with death and someone who affirms pathology. For example, there'd be a difference between the situation of Eric Garner if he had went to the cop and shot him and the cop shot him back, and then someone dying from a gratuitous form of violence. We think that you articulate your act through pathology as in the advent of white people making you criminal, not you criminalizing those structures and henceforth breaking through. Those are two different worlds, different things. It's a huge difference between orientation towards death, which is all of the arguments for why it's important to affirm pathology, to orient ourselves towards death and then radicalize the flesh against it.
Sure, and I guess I'm trying to ask, what is that difference? Because our affirmative is trying to state that I can't breathe is that dance with death. So I'm trying to get where that logical
No, our argument is that your explanation of solvency is predicated off of the inability for black people to die. It means that it is coherent because people can read empathy into the situation and say, I can't breathe as a place for people to politically mobilize. That's what you say. You say, I can't breathe as a space for people to politically mobilize.
I guess my argumentation is, why do you reduce the affirmative down to that simple nuance? We're in the 2AC.
Okay, that was a large fucking part of the 2AC, and you made like 2 arguments. So if I want to link, I want that we win a case turn. That's just like
I'm trying to figure out where the link argument is. I'm trying to figure out
the link argument is that the affirmative engages in a politic that begins from Winter. Winter gives a clear and coherent, rational description of the ways in which the 1750s led to the 1950s, and then black people were marked as in their space to nature, or fundamentally antagonism between nature, rather than one of anti-blackness. You say we need to affirm pathology. We think that you begin your pathology from the relationship of climate change or anthropogenic scenes of anthropogenic climate change, a sociogenic process, rather than one at captivity and flesh. We think Marriott says that actually starting at captivity and flesh is necessary. That beginning from
Marriott says that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, touche then. I guess my argumentation then comes down to the question of what is an unflinching paradigmatic analysis?
Well, I actually think that the text of the alternative is a little bit different. Okay. We say that an unflinching paradigmatic analysis that forefronts captivity and non-consent to call for an unflinching to demand the number. I don't remember if you can read it specifically.
Yeah, I'll read the tag. I guess my last question is.
But what is that? Would be like not do the act, affirm pathology, affirm black flesh as being. Think that I spent like
pathology?
3 minutes. Is it? No, that's our argument. It's blackness.
Blackness is pathology?
Blackness is pathology.
So then why is the affirmation of the 1AC not blackness?
Because it's not a question of are you blackness, it's that you're corrupted.
So then
it's that you have a disease that you can't escape from
truth,
because it attempted to rationalize and humanize itself.
If that is the truth, then I don't understand if we are blackness, how are we not affirming the pathology?
No, that's my argument, is that you don't allow for pathology because you put us back in the world. You don't criminalize blackness as flesh. You rather attempt to animate it in political spaces. You give it rationalization and coherence by your reading of the Winter and the Winter and the Agathangelo evidence.
Well, then I guess so.
I mean, I'm positive. I know you read the card because it obfuscates offense. We think that we can take the offense and not
I don't know what we're doing.
I think that's like 30 seconds. I thought that they were taking time to ask me more questions.
The cards have already been sent out.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're
kicked
good.
off.
No, you're good.
Does anyone have the username and password to this Hilton meeting?
I think the username is debate17 and the password is like
Hilton17.
Yeah.
Okay, man.
Is Hilton not capitalized? Is
No,
lowercase?
I think it's everything's lowercase.
Okay, thank you.
Good. First.
Malik Froda, no.
I'm not about to play this game.
I don't think that was that a thing.
At all.
It was. Okay, I got it. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
They're ready? Oh, it's the permutation. Alright. Is everyone ready?
Yep.
There are a couple theoretical framing arguments at the top of the flow. One, permutation severance if they win the perm stalls up because they shifted their theory throughout the debate. Now, this moves on neg officers now. Don't let them know, but not our combat breath out of the link arguments. Now, first of all, the second is that they don't get any permutation. They should hold their arguments in this game. We begin test them as a production of scholarship. Now, they shouldn't get points for good enough. Now, it also forces blackness, compromise, and potential whiteness. If we win, if they win some part of the app, if they win that, if we win some part of the app isn't good or their understanding and analysis is incorrect, the permutate eliminates all offense for the negative. Now, at best, the permutation is just a recognition of the whole. They don't dwell in. Now, you should conceptualize the one that sees the intellectual artifact. They don't defend the USFG, which is important because it allows for direct analysis of anti-black violence and black politics, about bullshit politics, advanced process of calculus. Now, this discussion can only be informed if the affirmative defends the performance, discourse, and methodology of the 1AC. Otherwise, the affirmatives can simply say we already did that in the 1AC, and just then arguments may well be forced to consider their political implications. Means that the app doesn't get a permutation. It means that the app doesn't get permutation because the bar was all political engagement. And the permutation is also another because permutation is also because it's part of the traditional USFG plan debate and historically anti-black and the championship to focus debate and responsibility of the one to say this after permitting reproduces anti-black practices and prevent analysis of anti-black violence. Now, the only impact you should filter your battle around to see what James called this Spiller's argument about the black matrix and forefronting how racial rape gets overloaded interracial capital, the understanding that black women are held in non-consensual captivity of racial rape, and the perm is an active erasure that performs violence to the black matrix. Trudy 14. More shortage not resistant, action resistant black women are not it's not termed to be expendable. The scholarship of black women is purposely on the appropriation of black is coming to a product scholarship of black women is purposely race and domination of rock. The example of the black women is not just from it's not about the knowledge of order, it's pop culture, it's black experience and culture, pornography, lying, oppression, social practice, erasing the cooperative generation of emancipation of black violence. Why must black women be liberated from anti-oppression through the proper expression and oppression through the experience of occur, reducing black into the mere protection of the ability to healing all persons black women remain as not persons in. I'll answer the weird double turn argument here. First, they say there's a double change between James and Waterston was one. This is nonsensical. James is not is not in conflict with Waterston. We say that black women are in the alternative. Yeah, we also didn't read James. Also, the alternative text is about captivity, not necessarily James's filtering of gender. I'll answer Marriott. Marriott is a celibacy take out for the permutation one. When he sees a double term, Marriott criticizes Winter because her new synthesis of anti-blackness is a sociogenic problem that relies on scientific truthiness and justification for its accuracy. This moves towards the genetic role of phenomenology in structuring anti-blackness combat. Itself is the struggle for perfection. This attempt to sustain anti-colonial resistance doesn't allow for the blackness to fail. Now, there's no double term with the reading of Willis and Marriott. One, the link is specific to the indicted Winter. That was above, as well as the double term cross-examination links back to Winter's understanding of phenomenology. Now, the second is that Marriott falls in line with the specific Woodson argument we have read in debate. None of the 2AC arguments were about the anti-black structures. None of the arguments behind anti-black structures, high theory bullshit. They don't get to see there's a difference between theories in general. Our interpretation of theories is our reading of the 1AC comes from Marriott's difference between ontological and ontic violence. On-take violence and what is overlooked. We say that our case paradigm analysis refuses to place blackness on the flesh. Captivity is then fleshed, and the piece of James said, the piece of James says that blackness is different. Colonialism and the Afro-Marriott evidence agrees. Yeah. Oh. There's a fact there. Oh, I took him. I'll read him out of the email. I took him out of the doc. And there's a framing argument merited in that which have radically different interpretation of decolonial violence. Negative violence is a true affirmation of pathology because it abandons the desire to counter hegemonic struggles. The written rebuttals attempt to narrow the one AC only affirms blackness as pathology, severance, and the conditionality Marriott 11. One common misreading of violence is the Hegelian struggle, progressive purpose in making the common subject of recognition rather than things that not recognize the violence is the human rights fundamental category of the human being. The decolonial violence engages to detoxification, eradication, and the process of decolonization can be identified through politics, but language is being ready like please to the programming of the judgment to back into the blame without jurisdiction. The moment of intervention is an event which appears and sees that representational forms of political decolonial violence plunges the and they are a Hegelian struggle, and that literally describes combat reason as an attempt to wrestle for life in political struggle against the colonializer vote. Negative on presumption, if we prove their 1C performances inconsistent, means they haven't met the burden of proof that goes 11. Feynman understands combat reason like the struggle with the slaves and continue with the foreign violence combat. Racism and the past remains after slavery, northern and intercolonial violence, but living practices construed and involuntary specific people's having to articulate the common presence, race life, and they existential structure dealer, the daily pulsation of content that disfigure the antagonize and present the market states facing their annihilation, the struggle of combat practice and deform the order of the rest for life. Yeah. Oh shit, not my dog. Now, you hold the line here. We don't have to do intricate explanation of the difference between Lacan and high theory, Lacan and Finney theory. They haven't answered. There's no offense answer to the W turn argument in the 2AC. All he does is say that there's a W turn between Wilderson and Marriott. There's no actual answer to the Marriott card itself. That is a complete indictment of Winter. They conceded this offense. They conceded a case turn. You can vote next on presumption.
Cool. We have 608. We'll take that starting now.
Here, or we can wait too. Okay, I'll wait.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Mom. Yeah.
Stop. Breathe.
What's the dog like?
3.
3 minutes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I don't worry.
Are there any? You have to like scroll up and hit like it's in there, but
No, that's
I'm sorry. Could we? I'm about to start right back up one more time.
Okay, start now.
I'll just scroll up to the full
5, stop.
253.
That's hard.
Got it.
253.
Not quite enough.
Oh, I took it for a cigarette.
There is.
There it is.
There's one like
Actually,
out
really
there.
beautiful.
Just that way.
Yeah.
I used to track with-
There's
No,
one
that
that way.
Oh, that way? I used to track with the AK?
Alright.
Yeah, that way? That nigga track with.
As you can see, you're making a
Yeah, you are. Good that way. Yeah.
That's the threshold.
Alright.
It's a no.
Almost can't listen to those.
See, look, another response. That way.
There he is. There he is. How about that?
You was,
I'll go first. I'll go first.
You can catch me outside too. How about that?
Right here. Right here. Accountability, right?
Dr. Lupe, they being mean to me over here.
She didn't hear
They talking about catching them outside.
Did you miss the part where he said, how about that?
Exactly.
You need to rewind it.
Thank you.
It's a big-
You can go to the tape.
Check your messages.
Check my messages? Okay.
And everybody that is not really one.
Damn, I have to get my water.
I think you just step on my skin. I'm gonna stand for it.
It's pork rinds.
Oh, it's pork rinds. I didn't do that. I don't like pork rinds.
I'm gonna trust you.
Especially when they like my mom. That's what I'm supposed to.
Why do you keep talking about that lady mom?
I'm not. Her mom is beautiful. So the average
Let's get into this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Me and Kevin, it's repairable. It's very repairable. We're done. No.
Come on. Come on.
Look at
Don't be like that.
Really good.
Yeah. I'm looking for this pork.
I know her. Will go.
I followed the order. I didn't have an overview. I didn't grab it.
So the baby just got being with her.
Not at all.
I'm so excited to get my meals.
I like that sweater.
Yeah.
It's like a sweater slash. That a button up or just.
No, it's just that it's that.
I might need to snag that from
It's a little crop.
Brittany has been telling me, shout out Brittany, that I need to bring back male crop tops.
It's not wrong. It's not right.
It's not wrong or right.
Yeah.
In between.
Yeah, that's why I like it. That explains the things.
I won't foreclose this. Say necessarily this and then. I will say I'm not sure. But I don't know if I would say it. Yeah, before it's not.
All parties accounted for, all the best is here.
Can we that blue pen back?
Yeah. Sure.
These aren't. Never mind. That's
Y'all
not
ready?
That's just whatever.
Alright.
It's from the other thing, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a line that I'm gonna read because it matters. Cool.
It's like 5 words.
Yeah.
Alright.
Well, it's not just the highlighted part, it's the
Oh,
whole thing.
cool.
Let's get it.
Yeah, I sent out some lines. It's not just the highlighted part, it's like I'm reading the whole underlined thing. But that's all that matters.
Let me eavesdrop.
Not me.
You don't need to eavesdrop.
Are we good?
With this eugenic shit.
Nah. Cool.
Yeah.
I love you. I promise you. Unconditional.
Oh no.
I know.
I'm sorry, speak now. Let's get it.
Alright, cool. It's basically gonna be like, block order. Stop. Okay. Oh, hi. Cool. I'll push it down so I can see you.
That's what she said.
They say it's a question of end blackness is not a science, but a culture. Yes, that is our analysis of the winter and to the way that cultural formation shape bodies at the bio physical level. This is the question of the way the muscular tension arises within the native with the type of psychic flesh acquires. When you have an anxiety attack, your heart beats faster, or the type of response that cultural phenomena have on the body. Now, the next reason common brother day, they lead those reasons. I'll do that one now. No, it's not a science. The traditional empirical positivism, the science of the areas of the way in which we can analyze the way that the words in black's bodies and how the word is created over time. The second is that this sociology needs to understand the black natures because they understand it's necessary to understand the way the cultural codes shape black women in particular, which is why our method is at the level, is at a higher level of analysis. Now the next level is that there is a question of the number of Marriott does not turn this. In fact, it's a question that they can see the Marriott 11 evidence that he is not contesting that Winter is wrong about our sociogenic analysis, just that she is comes to a historical moment. But this is why we have the Marriott card that talks about the leap that needs to be made as a change in corrective. Now the next argument is this type of blackness is pathology, but if blackness is pathology is blackness, and there is a tautology. The reason this is fundamentally unknowable is because you must overcode the narrative. What is pathology? What is blackness? The overcoding is key to this narrative that they have no realistic tautological answer. They just say that pathology is blackness, but blackness is pathology. Blackness just says this is not a definitional answer because it is impossible. Marriott claims that the decoding of blackness is violence itself, which requires a overcoding. Now the next argument is this type of the pathology of the flesh, but it's what now the next argument is that Winter is human is no. Marriott agrees with that. The work about this in common brother say politics no, it's not a politics and energy. They try to be the inactive evidence. I can do it too. Here it is. I articulate common brothers into a struggle that bring to the infinite and the finite that comes through the monolithic process. The common brother, the living disrupts and exceeds the dominant implicit spatial schism of ecology and body, sovereign subject and its soma of flesh, personal living mean the phenomenon, the noumena, and political projects of general orders means that is a oversimplification of what it is. You should look at the active evidence that the constituent energy of decolonization itself is the combat breath. Decolonization is not combat breathing. The energy that produces is combat breathing. Now the next argument is that it's echoing, but it's not an attempt to reclaim, but rather a way that the I can't breathe to reveal the rigidity of the structure. This is a phenomenological analysis. The way that that operates. The next argument is this type of flight of suspension. This is just because she says that it doesn't make sense to her. Does not mean it's not an argument. The suspension of the leap is necessary because this suspends it outside of time and history. It is always a movement that is both movement and not movement. This is the paradox of overcoding that when Marriott says we must overwrite the notion of complicity and add it upon blackness. The next argument is this type of this concept congruity, but I'll answer them on the permutation. They say scientific study. I did that work about they're going to say this eugenics argument. This is ridiculous for two reasons. One, it totally disavows the way in which cultural processes create violence upon black bodies to the level of the somata, which is a conception of the soma techniques of the body, because it does not understand the way the cultural context may influence the biophysical. Two, it presumes the notion that white people will do this, and somehow is this not already in the status quo, that white people already make these biophysical claims. Is a disavowal of the gratuitous nature of blackness that is always already pathologized. The fact that there could be a eugenics against blackness and somehow is not the status quo is a ridiculous and a disavowal of the paradigm. The second argument is that racial rape in Chicago. One day, Phillips evidence literally says that they are not analysis of, they say that they're not analysis of gender but racial captivity, but there's Phillips evidence says they focus on black women and gender, as well as the Trudy evidence is a double turn of the conflation of gender and racial captivity that becomes a type of double turn of their argument. Secondly, they can see the Hartman 16 argument that indicates that this is a question of how do we live, which means that this is not a question of the what best analysis you're going to have, but a question of how do people live within death. Our Hartman evidence indicates this type of relationality does not take place within any type of space or point of life, but rather is in death. Now the next argument here is that the outcomes work of the brain. I did that work above. Now the next argument is that permutation 1, there's no severance. The literal argument is that they are not competing analyses. Phenomenology and ontology are not procedural or sequential, but rather they influence and act upon each other. They are parallel but not sequential. Now secondly, this is not a severance argument. There's not one part of the 1EC we won't defend, but rather it's a question of reading the 1EC as our holistic artifact. On the next argument I'm going to go to here is that permeate is the limit its office. No, I don't think it does. I think it just means that you actually have to have a link to the affirmative. That's not just we didn't say the things that you said. This is a limited debate. Now the next argument is that this assumes a USFG paradigm. This is fundamentally false. It is a question of whether or not our analyses are different. You can be completely right at the ontological level, but that does not contest the phenomenological analysis that we're making here. Third, this assumes an attempt to impose coherence upon a discussion upon black scholarship that can make it coherent to the rules of debate. This is a form of epistemic violence that disavows the paradigm. It's a move to coherency that decodes blackness rather than overcodes. In American case, this is a form of violence. Now there's the true evidence of race of black women. This is fundamentally false because the notion of sociology is key to understanding the way that black women become specifically situated within social and cultural codes and how the situation becomes implemented at the neurochemical level. And the next argument is that there is not a complex that's a form of captivity, but one, this is fundamentally false. There's a concession of the Marriott evidence. I love that evidence indicates that it is not an ontology, but it's a logic that Wilson reduces to. This is a thesis turned to the entirety of the affirmative, because the negative, because they cannot win any claims because we have indicted that there is an ontological theorization of blackness. This has been termed because we indicate that their ontological theorization is simply a logic. It is not, it is a process that has been logically understood, but is not one that is locked within an ontological realm, which means they are completely wrong about their powers. You have to win at a base level that blackness is ontological in the first place to be able to make these claims. The Marriott evidence indicates that we understand the like reduces to a logical non-regroupability that attempts to is rooted in a sentimental desire to see oneself as the worst. That is the interjection of the superego within the black body that creates a notion of desiring for pain. Now the next argument is the type of criticism that work about. They say Marriott falls into line by ontological vibes, but no, their Marriott evidence is not correct in this instance because the Marriott evidence that we have corrects this type of notion of the what?
Go to the permutation.
I already did the permutation.
You make the argument about.
Oh yeah, this is the reason we have access to permutation. Permutation have benefit for two reasons. One, it allows a phenomenological analysis that is key to understanding how we operate in these spaces. Secondly, it is a ability plus. Secondly, the sociogenic analysis is key to understanding the Black Matrix Project. Third, they have conceded that resistance is inevitable because flinches are inevitable because of the way that it becomes interjected in the body creates a muscular tension is the all-too-human response, which that Marriott indicates. Now this means that this is the double term because there is a type of intellectual purity that is impossible, which takes out the alternative, means that permutation is the only way to solve.
Yeah, I'll email it to your question. Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. Not on the internet.
Do you want a kilogram? I can text Brian and Toya.
You have to read the bottom. That's
I know. I wanted to ask it. Okay, did they sourcing?
You want to just use ours?
They don't have a stage.
Oh, yeah. Wait, that is our standing deck. Never mind.
Dad, do you have your stamp copy? Can we borrow? Well, they need it. They're not, I'm not gonna. All right, they can borrow it, but I won't.
Oh, can they borrow?
Yeah. Now the new play, you see how they doing me dirty? See how they doing me dirty?
He told me to catch him outside
She said she was gonna fight me in the middle of the speech. She said she wanted to fight me in the middle of the speech.
He also said he was gonna fight me. I don't even think about the fight because I already know the conclusion of it, which is why I was like, see your guys how I know about this.
So you gonna give me a black eye?
You
said you gonna look, she gonna beat me up, take my money. Look, I'm shaking right now. Wow. Oh, I'm so scared. You should be scared.
Why are you scared?
I thought you said I should be scared.
I did. No, I'm asking what are you?
Scared I might get beat up.
That's why you're scared. That's
Damn, then I'm just not feeling the injuries.
yeah, that's what you're shaking from.
Exactly. That's your shit.
How about that?
Yeah, you gotta like, don't be afraid.
I really never had a problem. Because that one time, but we settled it the next one.
Okay.
It was a day, like,
No idea why they spent so much time on the alternative. Not very good at finessing, but it's pretty clear since the block that I'm going for a pick out of the one he sees reading of the winter evidence, because the winter evidence explains sociogency as a form of scientific positivism rather than an explanation of social causes. I think you have to look at me at the end of the debate and tell me that social causes is the same. That scientific positivism saying that people literally have neurochemical changes within their fucking brain is the same thing as having different levels of stress, etc., etc., etc. Their argument is not that stress doesn't lead to that stress doesn't lead to like bodily violence, but that the fact that they explain sociogency as a form of in a form of science sutures itself as a dialecticism. Their evidence, the piece of Marriott evidence they read, says that dialecticism is bad, affirming blackness as pathology good, which means if we win any link to them recuperating humanism through their reading of the winter evidence, it's a reason to vote either negative on presumption or the pick if you think that like phenomenology itself is important, because we just have to affirm blackness as flesh, which does not necessitate it can affirm sociogency without saying that that sociogency has to be linked to scientific analysis. Okay. The example that they're talking about what they concede of the Davis evidence, which is that science acquired black flesh as a theory from which to experiment the entire process of nature itself relied on an already existing process of slavery, captivity, commitment to black flesh already clapped into a natural science that's historical and practical matter. Why environment is talking about what affects us all rather than focusing on the problem that exists between both groups of people. You can avoid talking about race at all, and they end up talking about the agonistic relationship between humans v. nature, which is what their reading of the winter evidence leads to, because it allows for forms of humanism. It says that the problem has been created through one of sociogenic processes in nature because of a form of anthropogenic climate change. We need to switch the understanding to a sociogenic climate change that it can account for the antagonism between human and nature, not blackness as being. I'm going to slow down because I don't think that they're explaining a lot of arguments in this debate, and I think that these arguments need finesse. They say that at the top of the 1AC, they say that their reading of the resolution is that they refuse certain parts of the resolution because of the relationship that black people have to atmoterror, which is the Agathangelo evidence. Their solvency mechanism is combat breathing. They say that combat breathing is an act of phenomenology, or what happens after the ontological event. Our argument is that phenomenology is talking about flesh being, the Marriott evidence talks about phenomenology as in affirming black people's relationship to flesh. It's ironic that he spends time saying, she just says blackness is pathology, because our argument is that your desire to explain or give more meaning to blackness as pathology is our link, because the affirmative, which is what I explained in the 2NC pretty well, because the affirmative attempts to recuperate, rationalize, or give a coherent line of thought for how blackness has been treated in a certain way. For example, the idea that we went from 1750 to 1950, and that we can draw historical lines and then say that since that is true, it must be true that there is a sociogenic process that we can attempt to explain. That is Winter's argument. Yes, they are correct. That is not Marriott's argument, which is the reason why you can vote negative to endorse Marriott's understanding of sociogency and phenomenology coming from Fanon, and disagree with Winter's interpretation that says that since the advent of capitalism and the advent of a historical lineage that we can clearly trace, we should understand through a scientific model of sociogency. There is a very big difference between sociogency in terms of affirming blackness as pathology and saying that there is a scientific model that we should attune to. I know that this sounds a little bit repetitive, but it internally turns all of the affirmatives offense, because it means that their attempt to hold these two paradoxical things in tension with each other disallow for blackness to ever engage in that affirmation of pathology. Their understanding of Fanon affirming himself in the leap is bad, because it assumes that the leap was where he got his understanding of the world. The leap is the paradox because he realizes that he can never escape the gaze, right? That's why he thinks that we need to reorient ourselves towards death. The 1AC says, yeah, we agree, we're reorienting ourselves towards life, and life is within the death. That's what Hartman says. That's a terrible reading of the Hartman evidence. The Hartman evidence indicates that death, right, that there are certain ways to have social life in social death through an affirmation of blackness as pathology. We agree that the entire thesis of the act, or the rhetorical artifact of the affirmative, meant to say something. The problem is that it didn't. I think they concede a presumption and argument from the 1NR, except the Hegelian struggle, the Agathangelo decides common practice in an attempt to wrestle against a colonizer in the contemporary struggle. Again, here's a line from the 1NR: Karma brother is not an event of the path, but remains in slavery, nor the end of anti-colonial projects, but living practices constituted involuntary constrictions of specific people's lives. You can vote negative on perception if we wouldn't let proving a link to the Marxist performance is inconsistent. They even met the burden of proof. They conceded that Marriott framing Marriott and Agathangelo have radically different interpretations of decolonial violence and negative violence. Negative ballot is a truer affirmation of pathology because it abandons desire of counter-hegemonic struggle. They don't get access to the permutation. You can't permute a fucking double term with the affirmative. Our argument is that you should have just read Marriott, that your 1AC did need to include Winter. You don't have a defense of Winter. You don't have a reason why Winter is good. And no, we should not say that the act just gets to defend its intentions of what they wanted Winter to say. Winter is specifically talking about things that, they make a uniqueness argument that says that, like, if people that blackness is always already pathologized. Our argument is that you have to escape to the flesh before you can affirm pathology. You don't just affirm pathology as being, it's not criminalized. It's relationship to whiteness.
Cool. 252, starting now. I have the extension.
My computer's fucking up at the level of like.
I have the extension for you.
Okay, that's perfect.
About this today? Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you message her or communicate with her, I am whatever, let her know that you correct. I got it. And just let her know that you know that you know. Okay, thank you.
I thought he was saying that I needed to talk to him. I was trying to say for
cheese test after done. Well, yeah. I just realized we're also being live streamed. I want you to look at me.
I mean, well, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
When you said it, I was like, I have something next to it. I was like, not talking about him.
I think it's straight down.
Oh, wait, we're missing Will.
Huh?
We're missing Will.
Oh yeah, sure.
Blue pen?
You can have the blue pen now. It's over.
I don't know. Were you around here for this? I would absolutely. I need to know what happened. The camera's actually behind Andy. That's the microphone.
Well, that's you out there commenting on the post. Kind of wrong.
Did they go from front? I thought you stopped by.
Whenever you're ready. You ready? All right. Okay. Yeah. Touche.
Y'all say you're ready. Y'all don't be playing no games.
No. Yeah.
All right. I'm about to start, y'all. All right. Let's get it. As colonized bodies, our relation now to the topic is one of pollution. Civil society has criminalized our existence in the same way the resolution calls to criminalize certain GHGs. Our myriad evidence says that the very air is not neutrally empty, but rather filled with violent antagonists that constitute the very superstructure of the atmosphere around us. The basic statement through continued rearticulations are our winter evidence described the auto-speciations of ontologies, epistemologies, metaphysical notions of intentionality, coherence, and structuralism, such as the construction of completely pessimistic claims provided by the negative, such as the argument that resistance is not possible because it seems to animate the flesh, which conceals the phenomenological or experiential responses of the untimely gesture toward the indescribable shock of the revolutionary moment they may not constantly occur, and demand the attempt to grasp their reality from reality itself, even in the face of death. What they're not understanding is our piece of myriad and winter evidences, which not only acts as an ontological confirmation of the incoherent nature of breath, which is the reason why the permutation is debate is preferable. They have only literally spent like 5 seconds or 10 seconds on the permutation, so I'm going to get to that here. One, combat breath is sad the affirmative, or these are net benefits to the permutation. Combat breath is sad the affirmative. The affirmation of the pathologized body, the structure, vocation is not to to decode, i.e. they lock their unflinching paradigmatic analysis is locked in the telos. They are conceiving the telos that locks blackness into the historical understandings of what blackness is, which are based on biocentric understandings of the body, which is why our piece of winter evidence is very crucial in these claims, because it attempts to be able to understand that these are not biological codes, but our piece of winter evidence makes a distinction between biological codes and how they are transferred and considered to be universal truth, as they are non-genetic codes, and they then begin to get internalized, which is our argument about the occupation of breath, in which you begin to internalize these forms of colonization at the level of sight, at the level of vision, at the level of even hearing, in which you begin to interpolate how bodies then view the world, which is why our explanation of how this I can't breathe movement, i.e. Eric Garner was shot, this is a form of the police officer had to reconcile or occupy his breath through these forms of colonization to be able to recognize or racialize Eric Garner, to be able to say that he was a nigger and shoot him. That's our understanding of how these non-generic codes and processes actually operate in the status quo, and also to our piece of Marriott evidence, which is what we're going to probably win on in this debate. Marriott 16 evidence talks about the way in which it's not a question of trying to look at the affirmative through pieces, but rather as a holistic solution, which is our understanding of how we try not to decode blackness, but rather there are a multiplicity of things of overcoding blackness, both law and criminality, resisting and complicity with the advent, whether perverse, paranoid, or imaginary, or neurotic decolonial war. That's our Marriott piece. That's our Marriott 16 evidence. Now you can cross by the Hartman evidence, because at best it's a really easy way out to vote on the permutation, as they only literally spend 5 seconds just say that we just misread Hartman with no warrants or claims the reason why this is true. And also too, we don't even need new nuance and theorization, because it's a question of how we live in these spaces. They're conceding that the role of the judge in this debate, you can cross by the Hartman evidence that they say that it's a misread with no warrant, but they comment rather the assertion of resistance that does not happen in safe places, but rather in the here and now, where we are in a time and place where all refugees temporarily requires us to actually rethink the meaning of abolition, not only as a not yet, but not simply as the event for which we are, not simply just as the event that we are waiting, but as the daily refusal and the waywardness and care in the space of captivity, enclosure, and incarceration, to which is not an animation of the flesh, but rather straddling with that pathology and being able to confirm this argumentation. Now there are their only argumentation is the pig argument about the way in which Marriott disagrees with Winter, but we will get to, but they're still conceding the double term on the floor. I'll get to that later on the Marriott 12 evidence, but they have to still concede our piece of Marriott 11 evidence, and no contestation that Marriott doesn't disagree with Winter's reading of sociology, which has how she historicizes it and understands its origin, which is why our understanding of how the Marriott 16 evidence acts as a corrective to this understanding that the leap is something that is outside the temporal understanding. It's also too, Marriott is criticizing a other book, which is why our Winter evidence, which is in 2014, Marriott is criticizing another book, not this conversation between Catherine McKendrick and Sylvia Winter, which is why at the bottom piece of the flow it says that Winter talks about a transformative leap that is outside of teleological understanding. The 1AC Marriott evidence also criticizes the telos and event and serves as a corrective results in the impact. Marriott writes that I do not think Winter's reading is simply tenuous or inaccurate. Sociology shows how the modern self oscillates between two seemingly naturalized sets of assumptions about what it means to be human. What for non-sociology refers to how human and inferiority becomes to be read biologically solely in racial economic terms, which is why for Non himself also used biological terms such as secretion and virus, but also too.
Q says that it is important to know how the power is fluid to some extent, even if
Q said that it's important to know how power is fluid.
So you can see that that's why the
So you can see why our historical examples of how there are different accumulations of blackness via our piece of Winter evidence is very important to understand these claims. Also too, they say that piece of line of the Agathential evidence is Hegelian dialectic, but I don't even think they explain this argument very well. But also too, Nico rereads the Hegelian the Agathential evidence right back at you. As I reread this again, I articulate common rather the live struggle, living existential struggle that bring together the infinite and the finite without collapsing them into a monolithic process. This common breath of living disrupts and exceeds the dominant explicit spatial chasm of the ecology embodies sovereign subject or soma and flesh, person and living being, the phenomenon, the numeron and political project in their society continue to drive that. You should look at the Marriott 12 evidence that criticizes their double term with their Wilson evidence that they literally go conceded it, and we have flagged this argument on top of the phone there. Now you should feel the rest of the argumentation, the concession of Marriott 12 evidence. This turns their affirmative because it indicates they're affirmatively wrong. This reading of how ontology and reduces ontology to a logic of non-recoverability, but this is not what ontology is. They're reading understanding blackness through the ontology of the West as a universal logic, but this simply reifies the void relationality at the heart of blackness. In other words, the negative theorization presumes that blackness exists, but this is false. Blackness produced through the lyrium, i.e. blackness is the atmosphere produced through this body, thinking that its production is real at the ontological level has three impacts. One, Jewish something weighted of non-relationality creates a form of despair that ends in the desire to see black lived experience at the worst collapse into a form of sentimental moralism, and it's also this had to the reason why the pig is power does not solve, but also too in this way their analysis creates unrealistic craving for violence which intensifies anti-black violence in the status quo.
So,
Yes.
you know where Eric went? Or where he is?
He was in here the other day.
Okay.
So he's up here.
I'll find it.
Yeah. He was trying to get somebody with her, but she can be on her head. You want fries?
Fries? Yeah, I'll take some. You don't eat fries? Okay.
Actually, yes.
I would like to see the piece that you're reading back to 2AR.
Huh?
That little snippet that you're referring back to in the 2AR.
Which one?
The last one, the only one that you refer back to. I'm trying to play it. Whatever the two author name piece of evidence is, I don't know what it is.
Agatha Angela?
There it is.
Okay.
I got you. Whatever.
Agatha Angela is the first and the last name.
I don't know.
Everybody.
And what would you like to see?
I just
Marriott,
I don't know.
and Harmon.
We didn't read them. We didn't read a single one. We don't have a right line. I thought it was like a two author thing. I didn't know it was like one. This is like African living on the versus like.
Thank you. No, but thank you.
My time for what? You gotta babysit me.
Thank you.
My whole I'm the chaperone. I'm the chaperone.
Override.
Hello. I didn't really see it at all this term.
I can see you 4 times.
At this term?
Kendall don't fuck with me, sorry. I understand you can't fuck with everybody. Keep your circle closed. I feel it. Just because they skin folk don't mean they kill folk. That's a lot. I got a lot of jokes. I need to go to therapy. Actually, I'm gonna come on my bad. I've been coming to this theory that if you black, it should be like required that you go to therapy. Like just the shit that you gotta deal with. I need before you get 12. Like for you before you get like a black therapist is just ready for like black child psychology. It's just like I don't.
Come here, honey.
And it's a black woman in the lobby waiting for you to come out and give you a hug.
I told you that though, class. You know, black women don't play.
Which part of it?
That's from their evidence. I don't know if it's from ours. I can check to see. It's these multiple points of struggle.
No, this is all of it.
Yeah, so it's from their piece of evidence.
Okay, then what they call it see that shit over there.
Who is? Who is that? It's right after. I articulated it already. Yeah.
That's hard, man. Oh, I marked the card. My bad. Did you want to see that Agatha Angela evidence too?
What'd you say? I'm good.
Okay.
Ryan next door, the Agatha Angela evidence is right there.
All right, there. This is from their call that they made. I'm so fucking sick of that.
Minutes decision time.
Only when it's available.
Fair.
Because I have generalized anxiety disorder. If I drink caffeine, apparently, according to the science man, my parasympathetic or like sympathetic area of my brain just like goes really wild and I start freaking out about literally everything.
Fair.
So, but I love coffee. Like I
do
love
too,
coffee so much. I love black coffee, just like the taste of it. It's actually my least favorite. I got really salty about it because I used to drink like a whole cup like this of just espresso by itself, and I would just get like a tightness in my chest, but I wouldn't like freak out. But then I took some like meds for like anxiety like 2 years ago now, and ever since I got off of them, like just on them and off of them, I cannot drink caffeine really, and it's so annoying.
I drink way too much coffee.
I'll do it anyway. Like my girlfriend's super mad at me about it. She's always just like, and she's like, "What's up?" And I was like, "Yeah, I just got this coffee." She's like, "Why?" Which makes sense. She usually has to deal with me. I'm like, I'm kind of freaking out.
Yeah.
But now I love coffee. So when there's decaf, I gotta drink decaf.
I have like a really mild Crohn's disease, and so like if I drink too much, it really fucks with my stomach. But I can't do anything. So
Yeah. No, it's the
So
death
more
drive.
coffee,
Like,
so
it's
much.
probably the death drive, honestly.
yeah.
Because like it's just suffering. Like I don't even the suffering definitely outweighs the pleasure of drinking. But like I just
Yeah.
like I just
I drank like 12 espresso shots over the course of like 6 hours.
no. See that's wild. I don't do that. That's how you can do it.
You might get you winter stuff.
Huh?
Winter.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Latoya's looking at my computer right now. I might be able to pull it up on Darius's computer though. Okay, well, as soon as she's done with that, I'll get it for you. Is there a specific argument you're looking for, or just both cards? Okay, yeah, they're the first two cards here. You wanted to see the anatomy stuff?
I do.
Okay, he's looking at the winter evidence right now, but as soon as he's done with it, I will show you. Or possibly, if Darius has it on his computer, I can check the scene. His computer has a black screen, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna ask me. No, it didn't ask me to log in. So this is the thing that I'm reading. I'm reading it based on, this is actually not evidence we read. They read the anatomy fluid evidence. Actually, a piece of anatomy fluid evidence that we didn't even read. And I am reading this portion. I don't know, Max, where I put this portion.
Nika.
Anything else? Not for now. Cool. The one that works in there.
Anonymous Fox comments, topic is about climate change, but this debate is about anti-blackness.
Yeah, there was, I had someone who watched it and was like, debates sure changed. We used to debate the topic when I was in school.
We got thumbs down on the video.
Damn. Boo.
That's what we get for not being topical. Should have put up There was some dude. There's like all sorts of dudes freaking out, but yeah, this call everything. Like, someone asked what the topic was, and someone was like, if the topic was climate change, but this debate is about it.
What are the changes like performing good versus performing bad?
You don't even know how much prevalent ice is. Jesus.
He's holding that shit like it's your face.
Good. I mean, it's literally just rice and vegetables.
Which one? Which one?
Are they different?
Yeah, Kendall got noodles.
Oh, I guess like just the place rather.
No, Kendall got noodles and company. And I got.
The place, so I got QC from Joy D. It's pretty good. They have like really large.
Yeah.
And they have like Thai, Vietnamese, Japanese, Chinese.
All in one. Like,
Decision deadline.
Okay.
How do you guys You're missing a pen. You're missing a pen.
The Northwestern people are saying that you all are run out of time.
They sent you in here to deliver business?
Yeah.
Did you vote? Did you vote back in here to reaffirm the message that she came and delivered before, but they didn't get a response until they said louder, bolder, and more confident? She didn't get a response. Like, there's nothing wrong with her coming in and saying, no, for real, time is up, but don't send another agent. They feel like I a little bit more credit to a group of black people. Can you speak?
Are you surprised?
No. But it's still I'm surprised that she came out there. I'm surprised that entertains the shit. I'm sorry.
MS and then GW also fought.
MS laws?
No, we also have GW
Some reconstruction. Some reconstruction. I've been having I can't follow him.
Keyboard for like my iPhone. And keeps
Shit show go down. No, I just want you to. I want to just let it go out the back. Is that what I said? That's what I said. I'm sorry, black women can't be your friend. It's too much. I've heard everything. Andy and Kevin O'Leary are physically not here. You all lost them. You all have lost. You're responsible. Mr. Bond. And surely we are assigned to follow the judges.
You follow them already? You best not follow me, baby.
This is just Egyptian squirrel.
Now I'm about to go get some chips.
We have our hotel room there. We lost. You know what? People are like, oh yeah, okay. So you can Kevin and
to get around and stigma is not going towards it.
We definitely trying to populate these processes and things. I just think, you know, because we get some of the like psychiatry gets time apparatuses. This amount of time. I'm pretty sure that we can get ours in February. In terms of this, you know what I'm saying? Pushing that to and go. I mean, it's just so much pushback. And even proceeding to like issues with finances or trying to navigate without even not being problematic. I know that next year sets a tone for because wait, you're not going to be if Ryan, Willie, and Monty, anybody relevant is up there.
Willie was going that
Ryan got called into the brother.
They're in the records, Ryan. Okay. For sure.
Especially if you're starting this time.
I mean, I figured that God was there,
somewhere.
I mean, I was
West Georgia.
no, really good. What happened is that we did have candidates who were spaced out, so we kind of did have people. But that's because that's I don't know what we're doing. Like, it's just
So now we teach cast basically talking to them about kind of so we have like a simple cast. We're all yeah.
I think that
What's the local that person's
Congratulations for making it to the Octos. The decision is a 3-2 for the negative from Kansas. I was sad. So I wrote affirmative on the permutation. I think that the affirmative has won an impact turn to the pick with the 2AC Marriott 12 evidence, which I guess it was functionally a double turn argument. So this debate is weird for me because functionally it requires the judge to make a determination of who has the best reading and interpretation of the literature, but you both don't do a good job of raw to the level of impacting out your argument and then comparatively explaining those impact calculus in terms of what that means for the ballot. And so I'm not really surprised that it's a split decision, but you know, both teams are functionally going for the other side has double turned themselves and you should vote for me. But I think that, you know, no one, again, is explaining what that means or how I should adjudicate that. And I think that I'm left to determine the 2NR versus the 2AR. And I think that the 2AR has a more well-developed and easier to follow impact to their double turn argument. So I think that, you know, the affirmative is winning a large risk of the impact to the double turn, which is functionally that your reading of blackness through an ontological lens of structural antagonism is problematic for how we engage and determine blackness. I think that this implicates a negative argument in two ways. The first is I think that it implicates your theory of blackness, i.e. that it's not ontological in terms of an antagonistic sense, but contingently based on black experience, which for me provides a defensive argument to your double turn, because I think that what it does is it gives credence to the argument that their combining of the Winters with the Marriott is a corrective politics that kind of hints back at some of
Why
the
would the corrective of just waiting the Marriott not solve that? That's the part I'm confused about, is if Marriott provides a corrective to Winter insofar as saying that sociogency can be a thing without science positivism be a thing, then why include Winter?
Because I think that their rereading of the Marriott evidence in the 2AC, which is functioning like, I disagree with certain parts of Winter, but not this part of Winter resolves that.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that I don't think that you have won a large enough impact argument to justify just the Marriott debate.
Yeah, like I think that it's like a question of like, do we risk that like, is the Marriott debate sufficient enough, or does like the discussion of kind of the ways in which like cultural practices, particularly that I think the Winter they're citing particularly in the Winter's evidence, right, also contributes to the ways in which you can determine things like climate, like violence toward in terms of the climate. Right, which I think kind of couples with the Marriott 12 evidence, which they use as a sufficient offense against the criticism directly.
Okay, do you think that in the future, if I separate the first piece of Winter evidence and say that, sure, this is the part that maybe Wilderson says is possible to understand the 1750 whatever, but our argument is the second card they read that's just like the chemicals in people's brains, blah, 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 is the part that Marriott is saying that's a tricky space.
I think
and impacting that better?
That way, like kind of more kind of broader discussion of eugenics in relationship to that kind of ways, which kind of like there are certain forms of violence that is produced against certain bodies that cannot be kind of like predicated off of just like contingent forms of violence, that we need to take a larger way in which we can engage in structural analysis, right? I think that kind of making those direct arguments to the fact that like certain bodies are dealt with differently doesn't allow us to deal with all the intricacies of that, right? So focusing on the fact that flesh itself is what renders us capable of having kind of analysis to avoid that, or not necessarily avoid that violence, but to have a better understanding of the ways in which that violence happens.
Yeah, so for me, I think that you win functionally, that there's tension between Winters and Marriott. I just don't think you win an impact argument to that.
Or also a risk that the act doesn't resolve that.
The second thing that I think that it does is that it turns the pick. So the Marriott evidence says that the alternative would then lock in a sentimental morality which traps blackness into its own despair. I think that you have arguments about why blackness being pathology could potentially resolve that. I just need those applications to be specifically made. So I think that if you do two things for me, so I thought that the block was really good, right? I thought that you had some really good arguments in the block. I just don't think that that impact calculus makes it into the 2NR. So for instance, you have arguments in the block that impact out this biology determinism, positive scientism argument with eugenics. That doesn't make it into the 2NR. And then I think that another thing that you could potentially do is I thought that the first piece of evidence that indicted Winters was probably a better place to spend given the panel, because what that does is it says that Winters forecloses a gendered and sexualized nature or description of slavery, which I thought would have been a much better 2NR choice for this debate. Because what that does is that does not give the affirmative ability to be like, hey, Marriott is a corrective politics, because I think that what it does say is that, you know, the alternative theorization of the black matrix, even if your arguments about Marriott being able to resolve the tension between scientific positivism is true, doesn't get at the sexualized nature of that violence. And so for me, I thought that that could have potentially been a better 2NR choice. But if you extended some of these arguments about eugenics, which I thought that the 1AR was kind of weak on and the 2AR doesn't really do much with, it would have been an easier way for me to vote negative.
Extremely similar to Kevin. I think the one thing I do spend a lot of like pause on is the question of eugenics, right? I think that if it's impacted out more in the 2NR, that I can see that as a unique reason why kind of the fleshiness of dealing with things is probably better than kind of the way the body animates itself. Because I think that they don't have any preclusion for how the body animation itself produces that kind of gendered violence, right? I think that this becomes a better way in which you can deny the permutation and also explain why this is a floating pick, and that kind of how Winter forecloses the possibility of us talking about those forms of intimate violence that happens between kind of like even within like community, even within the kind of commutative group that like Winter talked about as well, right? That those forms of violence, right, cannot be understood if we can't render a grammar in the first place, right? I think that that argument would be much more sufficient. Second, I think that you should probably deal with the Hartman evidence a little bit more. I think that like they're right in the point that you don't warrant it, which is what I grant them as like a net benefit to the permutation, that like they have expressed a examination of like social life and how social life functions, even with death being kind of that I can say that paradox relationship, right? I think that the problem is that the tension that is created between kind of like this question of Winters and Marriott, right? I don't think that the Av loses the risk that they don't resolve that, or that the total life performance, which is the Marriott 12 evidence, right, doesn't begin to kind of create a way in which we can deal with paradoxical relationships, i.e. Winters reading versus Marriott reading, right? And I think that that's something that focusing particularly on the eugenics portion of the debate would out them out on kind of the permutation that you don't get access to this, because our argument is that the body, right, the body also details certain performances because the body is biological, right? Which means that like your science doesn't explain it. Furthermore, science doesn't explain the particular relationships of violence that happens that is not necessarily climate change, but just particularly how certain climates are produced.
I don't mind. I can start speaking on behalf of the other side of the panel. I strongly agree that there's like a risk of impact turn or double turns both way, and given that there's a lack of way to resolve it, I ultimately ended up voting negative on presumption, and the reason why is because I just think that ultimately, to give you the simple basis of it, I think that you should let black people die. I think that they are right in the reading of the Angatolugu evidence. Roll with me. On the Angatolugu evidence, in the sense that I think that you're right in the sense that you try to find life within death. I think that they've made an argument to some degree that we never ever get to the death part. And they have used your evidence almost as like a performed example of why this is true. And so I read this evidence a couple of times and tried to figure out like how it is that the I cannot breathe can get us to a moment of death. And I just never get that from you all. And so it is almost like you've locked yourself into this element of humanism. Now, do I think this is the best argument by the negative? No, but I think it functions as the tiebreaker in a world in which I just don't have a rubric from anybody of how to resolve those things. Nor was I willing to do the kind of work to figure out who had the larger impact or the best risk of impact, because that would require me to do it on both sides, and I just didn't think that was fair.
Do you mind if I email you?
That's fine. We have a panel. You didn't give me. You didn't give me the rubric to kind of do that, and I felt like you kind of left it up to me. And so most of the debate, I don't want to say it's a wash because I hate that kind of lazy language as an adjudicator, but I felt like I didn't have to go there because there was like this external piece of offense that I don't know how you got to the best version of your athlete, right? And so I guess I'm missing an explanation, particularly in the 2AR, of how it is that we get to live in that state of death. I get the how do we live part, and I think that that's kind of like the risk of your double turn, but how do we get to the death part? Right, and so I guess it begs the question of both of the double turns, right? It's just whether or not we get to blackness as pathology, regardless of the path, right? And I don't think that either path got there, and so it's fundamental on presumption. Does that make sense?
To resolve that, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I gotta communicate more of what my argumentation is.
And to just resolve that, just make a theory argument. They have an alternative. Presumption flips ass.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get presumption.
Also, you don't really go for the alt in the 2 and all.
Yeah, that's
right. She went for the pick, but there was not an argument in the 2AR as to why, like, no, that's bullshit. If you feel like these things create tension, or there's not like a way to get out of it, then you should vote affirmative. But I do feel like, in some hand, that there was this weird part after she it was a weird moment. She was slowed down for a while, and then she like kind of started to pick back up, and was like, now they've conceded this presumption argument. They don't allow black people to die. I think the block was better on this argument, but I just don't have an on-point response from you all about how it is that black folks are allowed to exist in a state of death, right? Okay. How can they just go away? Because they've kind of made sort of like a uniqueness argument that says that it's a myth to assume that black people are made to die at the hands of the world when actually they're made to live to some degree.
I think that's the Hartman evidence. So that Hartman says that we're going to live that like that kind of like paradoxical life of being dead, but also kind of having play in life in that moment of death. Every moment of death, right? And I think that's where kind of I give you weight or credence on like the permutation debate.
Okay, yeah.
I just don't.
But I don't think you do the connection.
I don't think the permutation debate resolves that, and I guess I'm unwilling to do that work for you all on that question.
All right.
Right. Because I think it is the safety net kind of evaluation tool of the 2 and R, which I don't think the 2AR grapples with.
So, do you feel that, and this could be applicable across a wide range of debates, but do you think that making a theory argument that provided an alternative flips presumption would have potentially resulted for an affirmative ballot?
I think that you could have just talked, like, been a little bit more explicit about the nature of, what is it called? Whatever breath. Right? Like, talk to me in practice about what that looks like with your body speaking that. Because I thought that was one of the most interesting moments of cross-ex for you all, particularly, it was your when you said this in cross-ex area. She was like, so if I'm black, then why am I not pathology? Right? And so I was just like, say that, where's that? But I don't feel like that came through in the 2AC, I don't feel like it came through in the 1AR, and I really don't feel like it came through in the 2AR. And I feel like if that's there, then there's almost no way for me to vote negative in this debate, considering that then that would access the net benefit of your permutation, which means that you get access to the pick and resolve the presumption argument, because there's something productive that you do just by nature of being here and almost like speaking or breathing death. Okay. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. I just don't think that you talk about the moment that is of the 1AC where you advocate the death, but rather just defend the methodology of breath, you know, as something to be defended, right? I also don't think that you should let this debate come down to a theorization of evidence, but that's also my bias in terms of being like evidence bad. But I just think it gets too theoretical and away from like what the text of your evidence says that you need to do. I think that you move away from doing the breath part of being in that like what does it say? Of participating in those lived practices, right? That can like find its way to navigate that paradoxical state of existence or non-existence of life or death or life in death, right? And so, therefore, I would have negative.
Sure. Super interesting debate to watch, but deciding it is like the flip side of that. So I didn't vote on presumption. I'm more on the pick side. The couple things that would make this easier for me is earlier in the debate, just setting up some parameters for what the negative should be allowed to do. Like maybe the development of this as a pick is maybe a little bit new and maybe you didn't see that coming, but it feels like they're getting away with doing something that they shouldn't be able to do. By the fact that there's argumentative tension in your stuff doesn't, I don't think, mean that not reading that card should be a reason that I vote negative. Like I think that just kind of some standard arguments about right, the need to engage in philosophy and try different things and kind of work with them together, and the fact that there's not like perfect congruity between them doesn't mean that you should lose. But regardless from that, and then there's just some earlier defense on like there was an argument in the 2AR that's like this is responding to an earlier type of, or an earlier winter book, and you're right, like if you look at their card, there's an underlined part that's like directly after the line that's damning, it's like in response to her earlier work, and it's like, yeah, exactly, and I need a little bit of that earlier on. That would make me feel much more comfortable. Regardless, here's the thing that's bigger for me though, is that it seems like regardless of who's doing the better reading of either Winter or Marriott, I want more important reasons as to why those phenomenological encounters are important, why that creates the lines of flight that might be important. So I end up thinking like you all have a type of politics that allows for those to happen, and that the negative is winning some spin, and it's definitely spin. Their link cards aren't great on this, about why that might be problematic or scientific positivism, or regardless, whatever it is, that there might be something bad there. I don't end up thinking, I don't know what are the important potentialities of those lines of flight at the end of this round. I think they're kind of there in the 2AR. I think they kind of drop out in the middle of the debate, and I'm wondering what they are. I think that your winter evidence, kind of hints at it, and that there's other cards that you have that are really good on that question, but purely in terms of just spin on this, like what would it get used as, they're doing some work here about how that becomes a suturing of civil society and a reclamation of humanism, and I don't know what the flip side is. I think that there's important things there, and the reason why, starting with kind of this framing about what they're allowed to pick out and what gain access to, is because I'm not so sure if I vote negative and like the Wildersonian kind of way of doing this, that they really get access to the powerful parts of combat breathing of your stuff. Like, that's the best part of the app. And so it's super frustrating for me where I think they're getting away with what they shouldn't be able to. But in a world where I'm just like, maybe if you don't read this and it resolves that tension and the pick solves this stuff, it kind of gives me a way out. And this is not a debate that I'm like super comfortable with, not because I'm not comfortable with it, because I didn't have enough time. I like reread these Marriott cards so many times, and then they called me and they're like, you gotta make a decision. And it came down to that where I'm like, I feel like there's a risk of an impact here. And I'm gonna be thinking this round, I'm gonna read some more stuff, and I'd like to talk to you all about it more. But this round is deep. and heady in a way that give me some ways out, give me some clearer debate technique ways of understanding, and I'm on your side because you're debating so well.
So my question on this technail, for us, I think that Marriott 12 was that technail, right? Because it says very clearly, right, that blackness is not an ontology, it is, and Wilder's reduces it to a logic.
Yeah.
How did that factor into the decision? Because the argument that she makes, right, is that Winter reinscribes humanism.
Yes.
But the reinscription of a generic humanism is only bad because of the presuming that blackness is an ontology that is against all forms of humanism. So kind of how did that factor into the decision, and what in the future could we do to make that an easier way out for you? Because in my mind, right, maybe I'm wrong, and when I'm floating, right, I don't have that at all mentioned in the 2R.
Yeah, agreed. And this is one where I didn't know what to do with it.
Okay.
I didn't know what to do with that argument. Like, similar to some of the other judges where it's like, it feels like there's things stacked up on both sides, and I thought that their pick gave me a way out. That it was something that was, like Q's first question right before she left, where it's like, why doesn't just not reading the Winter resolve this? I was like, maybe that's kind of what I voted on, which is not a great scholarly decision or a great mode of politics. Totally agree with that.
So you think framing that at the top as a more of an a priori question would have been better for you?
For me, totally.
Okay.
Totally. It at least frames that in my mind as the way that I should approach this debate, and not in terms of whatever ingrained offense-defense paradigm I might have because of how many years of debate. Just a different way of how I should be thinking about this round writ large. And that's why just saying this is what our scholarship is and why you shouldn't think of it in that way. And then I think that just in terms of truth of the matter, you're on the right side of this.
Definitely. Thank you.
I don't disagree, it won't be long. I think you are more valid in a world where you deal with some of these questions of timeliness and where you start your interrogation and investigation. For me, what starts to paint a lot of how you orient yourself towards interrogating humanity or even having better, more meaningful conversations about pathology is where it is that you deal with moments of captivity and modernity versus the historical moment that you all start having conversations about the way that sociology comes to shape and come into existence in a world where you pick a particular plot on a line and you say this is where we start our interrogation. I think that detracts from your ability to say that but it takes away from your ability to say that you leave room for depth to the right? And that is because you then ignore kind of the historical influence of those moments of captivity and modernity on how we understand climate change, on how then we start to be socialized, on how then we come to quantify and separate and categorize people, how we then come to interpolate them, right? That all speaks to where that position started. And I think you all just don't take them up or don't resolve for me why it is at that moment on the spectrum of time is one that is a better explanatory mechanism for me about humanity and how I should understand it. So, in that world, I think then I become more comfortable with the pick and how then it starts to explain some of the dynamics of the affirmative and some of the things you all tend to resolve, especially in a world where things become super heavy and it becomes easier too. I think just there are moments where, and I see intentional attempts to try to get out of the weeds and try to be very specific, try to be very clear about things. But I still even think even more so slowing down either at the top or the bottom of that speech and saying, look, a couple things we need to resolve by the time this debate is over. This, that, this.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? And kind of boxing stuff out very completely because there is this very low and slow conversation that you have about the function of the pick where she is able to retell the story of the affirmative to me when she says that when they see refuses parts of the resolution, they attempt to solve those or provide some interpretation of solvency through combat breathing. This happens post some type of event, right? In response to some event and not solely as it exists on a spectrum of modernity that exists after captivity, right? I think when it is able to be painted as in response to some event, right, that obscures for me what happens before that, which means that obscures how you all orient yourself towards negotiations of pathology and what those things mean. TLDR, deal with that part of the debate, especially when it's in the 2 and when they're like, listen, they have picked out moments that necessitate a responsiveness to antagonism, right? And not thus kind of challenging what they mean when they say that there's some type of resistance, because the best type of resistance is one that essentially doesn't resist at all, right, but allows for the pathology to play itself out. And thus putting death back on the table as an option. So just deal with that part of the conversation.
have some continuity with that part of the debate. And we're good. But I think this whole notion of drawing historical lines or these lines of fight flight being manifested in that particular time period kind of shape for me how you then grapple with questions of power.
So, just same question I have for you that has for Andy, which is how did you kind of grapple with this Marriott 12 evidence? Because I think a lot of the stuff you're talking about, like this obscuring on the historical line and the kind of configuration of the prevention of dealing with these questions, presumes an ontological basis that gives coherency to those questions and makes their impacts meaningful.
Not there. Very close to voting out. Right? I think it's just a level, it's a question of the words you say, how you say them, and how you connect some of these ideas more cleanly to make that argument. It is not that I disagree with your interpretation of that piece of evidence. I even go back to the permutation and find it potentially a place to vote. However, it does not, you don't do enough to reconcile that other part of the debate for me in a clean way.
So you think they're talking about that other part of the debate, but through what Marriott would describe that as instead of their story would be productive?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm excited for the next time I get the next crack I get. Okay. I'm excited for the next crack I get because the more and more I'm developing like a language for y'all. You know what I'm saying? So I'm excited for more and more opportunities to kind of get into the landscape of how you are thinking about the topic.
Thank you.
Thank you for sure.